My apartment burned down at 2:46 in the morning, leaving me barefoot in the freezing cold. When I called my parents for help, they told me it was not their problem and hung up. I thought they were just heartless, but I was wrong. 7 days later, I discovered my insurance policy had a new beneficiary I never authorized. My parents did not just ignore the fire, they were waiting for the payout. My name is Giselle Jenkins. I am 32 years old. I am a senior data strategist at Redwood and Klein Analytics, a job that requires me to find patterns in chaos and predict outcomes based on hard evidence. I have a credit score of 780. I have a retirement fund that I contribute to every second Friday. I have a 10-step skincare routine and a calendar color-coded by priority. I am the kind of person who buys renter's insurance not because I expect a disaster, but because it is the responsible thing to do. I built a life of calculated stability. I built a fortress of order, and then I lost my apartment in a single night. The end of my world did not begin with a bang. It began with a sound that drilled directly into the base of my skull. It was 2:46 in the morning. I know the time because the red digital numbers on my bedside clock were the last clear thing I saw before the gray haze swallowed the room. The smoke alarm was screaming. It was not the low battery chirp that annoys you while you are trying to cook dinner. This was a relentless, piercing shriek that bypassed thought and went straight to the adrenaline centers of my brain. I sat up, coughing. The air in my bedroom was no longer air. It was a thick, chemical soup that tasted of melting plastic and scorched drywall. My eyes watered instantly, stinging as if someone had thrown sand into them. For a split second, my brain tried to rationalize it. I thought perhaps I had left the stove on, or maybe a neighbor had burned toast. But then I saw the orange glow reflecting off the building across the alleyway, dancing violently against my window pane. Panic is a strange thing. In the movies, people scream and grab their most precious heirlooms. In reality, you freeze. You lose the ability to prioritize. I looked at my laptop, which sat on my desk. That machine contained 4 years of work, my entire portfolio for the promotion at Redwood and Klein, and every personal photo I had scanned since college. I looked at the jewelry box on my dresser, where my grandmother's necklace was kept. I took neither. Instead, my hand shot out and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. That was it. Just the phone. I did not even grab a coat. I was wearing a thin cotton nightgown and nothing else. I swung my legs out of bed and my bare feet hit the floorboards. They were already warm. That was the detail that terrified me more than the noise. The floor was warm. I scrambled toward the door, staying low like they teach you in elementary school, though I felt ridiculous doing it until the smoke forced me to my knees. When I touched the doorknob, it wasn't hot yet, but it was vibrating. I yanked it open. The hallway was a tunnel of black smoke. The emergency lights were flickering, casting seizure-inducing shadows against the walls. Somewhere down the hall, a dog was barking, a high-pitched, frantic sound that cut through the mechanical wail of the alarms. I heard glass shattering, the sound distinct and sharp, like a gunshot. "Fire!" someone screamed. "Get out! Move!" I ran. I did not look back to see if I had closed my door. I just ran toward the exit sign that glowed emergency green in the dark. My bare feet slapped against the industrial carpet of the hallway. And then the cold, hard concrete of the stairwell. The stairwell was chaos. People were shoving past each other, some carrying pets, some carrying nothing. A man in his underwear was clutching a framed poster. A woman was dragging a suitcase that kept tripping people up. We spilled out onto the street like water bursting from a pipe. The shock of the cold was physical. It was mid-February in the city, and the wind was cutting through the streets with knife-like precision. The temperature was 14 degrees, but with the wind chill, it felt like 0. The pavement was wet and freezing, biting into the soles of my feet instantly. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering so violently my teeth clacked together. I turned around to look at the building. It was my home. It was the place where I felt safe. And now, flames were licking up the side of the brick facade like a hungry animal. Thick, black smoke billowed out of the windows on the 3rd floor. My floor. I watched as a window blew out, the glass raining down onto the sidewalk across the street, followed by a tongue of fire that roared into the night sky. I stood there, shivering in my thin nightgown, surrounded by neighbors who were wrapped in blankets provided by the first responders. I had missed the blankets. I was invisible. I felt a profound sense of erasure. Everything I owned, every piece of clothing, every book, every document that proved I existed, was currently being incinerated. I was Giselle Jenkins, senior analyst, but standing there on the curb. I was nobody. I was a statistic. I needed help. I needed a voice that knew me. My fingers were stiff from the cold, clumsy as I unlocked my phone. The screen was blindingly bright in the darkness. I went to my favorites. I pressed the call button for Mom. The phone rang. It rang 4 times, 5 times, 6. Please pick up. I begged silently. Please just pick up. Hello? The voice was groggy, thick with sleep, and laced with irritation. Mom, I choked out. My voice was broken, unrecognizable even to my own ears. Mom, it is me. Giselle? She sounded annoyed. Do you have any idea what time it is? It is almost 3 a.m. Mom, there is a fire, I said, the words spilling out in a rush of hysteria. My apartment building. It is burning. I am outside. I do not have anything. I do not have shoes. There was a silence on the other end. I expected a gasp. I expected the rustle of sheets as she sat up. I expected the immediate, primal concern of a mother hearing her child is in danger. Instead, I heard a sigh. Are you hurt? She asked. The tone was not frantic. It was the tone one uses when asking if a coworker has finished a report. No, I do not think so, I stammered, looking down at my blackened feet. But everything is gone. Mom, the fire is coming out of my window. I do not have anywhere to go. Can I come home? Just for a few days? Please. I heard the phone muffle, as if she had put her hand over the receiver. There was a low murmur of voices. She was talking to Richard, my stepfather. I felt a surge of hope. Richard was pragmatic. Richard would tell her to get the car keys. Richard would say to come over immediately. The muffling stopped, but it was not my mother's voice that came back on the line. It was Richard. Giselle, he said. His voice was awake, alert, and cold as the pavement beneath my feet. Richard, please. I was crying now, the tears freezing on my cheeks. I am on the street. I have nothing. Giselle, listen to me, he said, his voice dropping an octave, serious and firm. We are not doing this. You are 32 years old. You are an adult. My brain stopped working. What? You have insurance, do you not? He asked. You have a savings account. This is life. Bad things happen. You handle them. But I am barefoot, I whispered, the absurdity of the argument mixing with the horror. My apartment is burning down right now. That is unfortunate, Richard said, but it is not our problem. Do not call here again tonight. You are upsetting your mother. Wait. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the screen. The call duration showing 42 seconds. 42 seconds to sever a lifetime of obligation. I stood there, the phone clutching in my frozen hand, and the world tilted on its axis. The fire trucks were arriving now, their sirens wailing, drowning out the wind. But the silence from that phone call was louder than all of it. Not our problem. I looked up at the burning building. The fire had consumed my living room window. I could see the skeleton of the building beginning to show through the flames. Why? The question looped in my mind. Why were they so cold? My mother and I had a strained relationship. Yes, she was critical. She was distant. But she had never been cruel. Not like this. And Richard. Richard was indifferent, but he cared about appearances. Leaving his stepdaughter on the street in the middle of winter did not fit his narrative of being a pillar of the community. And then, a memory hit me. It was sharp and sudden, cutting through the haze of shock. Last week, my mother had come to the city. It was a Tuesday. She never visited me on weekdays. She rarely visited me at all. I had not seen her in my apartment for nearly 2 years, but last Tuesday, she had called and said she was in the neighborhood for an appointment and wanted to stop by. I had been surprised, but I let her in. I made coffee. We sat on the beige sofa that was currently turning into ash. She had been restless. She did not sit still. She had walked around the apartment, touching things. She asked about the new smart lock I had installed on the front door. She asked for the code, saying, "Just in case of an emergency. Giselle, what if you slip in the shower and I need to let the paramedics in?" I had given it to her. 5, 2, 8, 9. She had asked about my work schedule. "Are you still working those late nights at Redwood and Klein? Or are you home by 6? "I am usually home by 7, I had told her. "But next week, the week of the 14th, I have that big conference. I might be working from home to prepare." "Oh," she had said. "So you will be here? In the apartment?" "Yes," I had said. "Why?" "Just curious." She had smiled. It was a tight smile. "Just worrying about you. That is all." She had walked into the bedroom. She looked at the smoke detector on the ceiling. "Do you check the batteries on those?" she had asked. "The building manager does it," I said. "Good," she said. "Good." Standing on the freezing sidewalk, watching the firefighters unroll their hoses, the memory felt different. At the time, I thought it was just her being intrusive. Now, it felt like something else. It felt like reconnaissance. She had been scouting the location. I shook my head, trying to dislodge the thought. It was crazy. It was the trauma talking. My parents were selfish, yes. They were emotionally unavailable, yes. But they were not monsters. They would not set a fire. They would not leave me to die. A firefighter approached me, a large man in heavy gear. "Ma'am," he asked gently, "we have a bus coming to take residents to a shelter. Do you need a blanket?" I looked at him. "I need a phone charger," I said, my voice hollow. "And I need a lawyer." He looked confused. "A lawyer?" "Never mind," I said. "Yes, I will take the blanket." I wrapped the gray wool blanket around my shoulders, but the cold was no longer coming from the outside. It was coming from within. I looked at the phone again. I wanted to call them back. I wanted to scream at them, but I knew, with a sinking certainty, that they would not answer. I spent that night on a cot in a high school gymnasium that had been converted into a temporary shelter. I did not sleep. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of strangers crying, and I replayed that 42-second phone call over and over again. Not our problem. They thought it was over. They thought they had washed their hands of me. 7 days later, I was sitting in a borrowed cubicle at the insurance office, wearing clothes donated by a coworker. I was there to file my claim, to try and get enough money to put a deposit on a new apartment, to buy a new laptop, to start over. The claims adjuster, a man named Caleb with tired eyes, was clicking through my file on his computer. He frowned. He clicked again. Then he looked up at me, his expression shifting from bored bureaucracy to confusion. "Ms. Jenkins," he said, "I see here that you have a renter's insurance policy with a coverage limit of $50,000 for personal property." "Yes," I said. "That sounds right." "And the liability coverage is standard," he said. He hesitated. "But I see a note here regarding the beneficiary designation." "Beneficiary?" I asked. "It is renter's insurance. The money goes to me, to replace my things." "Usually, yes," Caleb said. "Unless there is a loss of life rider or a specific assignment of benefits filed, which there is." He turned the screen toward me. This form was submitted. He checked the date. 8 days ago. It assigns 100% of the policy payout. In the event of your incapacitation or death, or acting as your designated power of attorney for claims, to, he read the names, Richard and Angela Halloway, my mother and stepfather. "I did not sign that," I said. My voice was very quiet. "It is signed here." Caleb pointed to a scrawl at the bottom of the digital document. It looked like my signature. It had the same loop on the G, but it was shaky. I did not sign that, I repeated, louder this time. I did not authorize this. It was filed in person, Caleb said. At our downtown branch. My blood ran cold. 8 days ago. The day after my mother visited. The day after she asked for my door code. The day after she checked my work schedule. They did not just know about the fire. They were betting on it, and judging by the loss of life clause they had tried to trigger, they were betting on something much darker than just property damage. They hung up on me because they thought I was supposed to be dead. I looked at Caleb. I need you to print that, I said. I need you to print everything. Ms. Jenkins, if this is a dispute, it is not a dispute, I said. And for the first time in a week, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like a strategist. I felt like the woman who found patterns in chaos. It is evidence. They called me dramatic. They called it bad luck. But fires do not choose their victims. People do. And as I stared at the names of the people who raised me typed neatly on that form, I realized the fire was not the tragedy. It was the weapon, and the war had just begun. The heat coming off the building was physical, a wall of thermal pressure that pushed against the freezing winter wind. It was a bizarre, sensory nightmare. My front was baking, the skin on my face tight and hot, while my back was being whipped by a wind that felt like it was carved from ice. I could hear the structure of the building groaning, a low, mournful sound of wood, giving up its structural integrity under the assault of the flames. Then came the sound of the windows going. It was a sharp, popping sound, distinct and violent, like gunfire in a canyon. Shards of glass rained down onto the street, glittering orange in the reflection of the inferno before shattering against the asphalt. A woman near me screamed as a particularly large plume of fire erupted from the 3rd floor. My floor. I watched the flames lick up the side of the brickwork. They moved with a terrifying hunger, consuming the curtains I had bought 3 months ago. The window frame I had painted last summer. It was not just a fire, it was an erasure. A firefighter in full turnout gear stomped past me, his heavy boots crunching on the glass. He was shouting into his radio, his voice muffled by the mask, but I caught the urgency in his tone. I stepped forward, driven by a desperate need for information. For someone to tell me this looked worse than it was. "Excuse me," I croaked. My voice was a wreck, raspy and thin. "Excuse me, sir. Apartment 304. Is there any chance?" He stopped and looked at me. His eyes were the only human thing visible amidst the heavy yellow and black gear. They were sympathetic, which was the worst thing they could have been. If he had been dismissive, I could have held on to hope. Sympathy meant he knew the truth. 304? He asked, looking up at the blaze. The fire was currently roaring out of the windows on the northeast corner. "Ma'am, the structural damage is already extensive. The roof is compromised. We are in a defensive posture now. We are just trying to keep it from spreading to the adjacent structures." "Defensive posture," I repeated. The words felt heavy and final. "So, you are not going back in?" "It is not safe," he said gently. "I am sorry. Everything in those upper units is going to be a total loss." Total loss. The phrase hung in the freezing air. 2 words that wiped away a decade of my life. I stepped back, my bare heels hitting the icy curb. I looked down at my feet. They were gray with ash and red with cold. A neighbor, a woman from the 1st floor whose name I could never remember, saw me shivering. She had a thick wool blanket wrapped around her, and she opened it, pulling a spare one from a pile that the paramedics had started to distribute. "Here," she said, her voice trembling. "Take this. You are freezing." I took the blanket. It was scratchy and smelled of mothballs, but I pulled it around my shoulders, clutching the edges with hands that had lost all feeling. I felt a profound sense of humiliation wash over me. I was Giselle Jenkins. I made 6 figures. I managed data for Fortune 500 companies. And here I was, standing on a public street in the middle of the night, wearing nothing but a thin nightgown and a borrowed blanket, watching my life burn. I felt like a child. I felt like a beggar. My mind began to catalog the inventory of the dead. It was an involuntary list, scrolling through my brain with punishing clarity. The laptop. My work laptop was sitting on the dining table. It contained the entire predictive model for the Kleinschmidt account, a project that had taken me 300 hours to build. I had backups of the raw data on the server, but the models? The specific algorithms I had tweaked until 2 a.m. for the last 3 weeks? Gone. My passport. It was in the top drawer of my desk, along with my birth certificate and my social security card. The bureaucratic proof of my existence was turning to ash. The box under my bed. That was the one that made my stomach turn over. It held the only physical photographs I had of my grandmother. It held the silver locket she gave me when I turned 16. It held the journals I had written in college. Those were not things I could replace with an insurance check. Those were pieces of my history, and they were being cremated right in front of me. I gripped my phone. It was the only thing I had saved. The battery indicator showed 12%. I needed my parents. I knew what they had said. I knew Richard had hung up, but the shock was wearing off, replaced by a desperate, childlike need for safety. Maybe they had not understood. Maybe they were half asleep. Maybe, if I called back now and told them it was a total loss, that I was standing on the street with nothing, they would snap out of their coldness. They would be parents. I unlocked the phone and dialed home. It rang. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. I watched the fire hoses blast streams of water into the inferno, the water turning to steam instantly upon contact. 4 rings, 5 rings. Please, I whispered. Please pick up. The call went to voicemail. I dialed again. This time, I called my mother's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. She had turned it off, or she had set it to do not disturb. I stared at the screen. The rejection was more painful than the cold wind. It was deliberate. They knew I was in crisis. They knew I was calling, and they were choosing silence. I opened my text messages. My fingers were so stiff I could barely type. Mom, Richard, please, the building is gone. I have nothing. I am on the street. Please call me back. I hit send. The status changed to delivered. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. No typing bubble appeared. No ringtone broke the silence. Just the roar of the fire and the crackle of the police radios. I was alone, truly, completely alone. Panic began to rise in my throat, a dark tide threatening to drown me. I could not stay here. The police were starting to tape off the street. The bus the firefighter mentioned was pulling up. A city transport bus meant to take us to a shelter. The thought of getting on that bus, of sleeping on a cot surrounded by strangers, made me feel like I was suffocating. I scrolled through my contacts. I needed someone, not family, someone who actually gave a damn. Holly. Holly stood 2 cubicles down from me at Redwood and Klein. We were not best friends, but we were work friends. We grabbed lunch together on Tuesdays. We complained about management. She had once told me that if I ever needed to hide a body or just hide from the world, her couch was open. It was a joke, back then. I pressed her name. She picked up on the second ring. Giselle? Her voice was groggy but alert. Is everything okay? It is 3 a.m. Holly, I said. And then I broke. The sob ripped out of my chest, ugly and loud. Holly, my apartment. There was a fire. It is all gone. Oh my God, she said instantly. Where are you? Are you hurt? I am on the street, I sobbed. I am outside the building. I do not have shoes. Holly, I do not have anything. Send me your location, she commanded. There was no hesitation, no questions about how it started, no lectures about adulthood. I am coming to get you. Do not move. I am getting in the car right now. Thank you. I wept. Thank you. 20 minutes later, a silver sedan screeched up to the police line. Holly jumped out, still wearing her pajama bottoms and a heavy parka. She spotted me shivering under the gray blanket and ran over, ducking under the police tape before the officer could stop her. She did not say a word. She just wrapped her arms around me and held me up because my legs were finally giving out. She smelled like lavender laundry detergent and safety. "I have got you," she whispered into my ear. "I have got you. Let's go home." She drove me to her place, a small duplex on the west side. She gave me a pair of thick wool socks and an oversized sweatshirt that read, University of Michigan. She made me hot tea. She put sheets on her couch. She did not ask for details. She did not ask about my parents. She just created a space where I could exist without being afraid. I did not sleep that night. I lay on Holly's couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flames. Every time I drifted off, I heard Richard's voice. Not our problem. Morning came with a gray, bleak light. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a body that felt like it had been beaten with a bat. My throat was raw. My eyes were swollen shut. I sat up, the borrowed sweatshirt hanging loosely on my frame. Holly had already left for work. She had left a note on the coffee table. "Took a personal day for you, but had to run in for a morning meeting. Back by noon. There's food in the fridge. Stay as long as you need. H." I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:30 in the morning. I needed to be practical. I was a strategist. I dealt with data. The data said I was homeless and without any possessions. The solution was to activate the safety nets I had put in place. I reached for my phone, which was plugged into a charger Holly had left out for me. I needed to call the insurance company. I had been with the same provider for 5 years. I paid my premiums on time. I had the gold tier renters package. This was what the money was for. I dialed the 1-800 number on the back of my digital insurance card. "Thank you for calling Apex Mutual," the automated voice chirped. "For claims, press 1. I pressed 1. "Please hold for the next available representative." I held for 10 minutes. The hold music was a terrible, tinny jazz loop that grated on my nerves. Finally, a human voice came on the line. "Apex Mutual. This is Sarah speaking. Can I have your policy number?" "Yes," I said. Clearing my throat, it hurt to speak. "My name is Giselle Jenkins. Policy number 849221-B, as in Bravo." I heard the clicking of a keyboard. "Thank you. Ms. Jenkins," Sarah said. "How can I help you today?" "I need to file a claim," I said. "There was a fire at my residence last night. The apartment is a total loss." There was a pause. The typing stopped. "Oh," Sarah said. Her tone shifted. It became guarded. "I see the flag here. Ms. Jenkins, are you safe right now?" "Yes," I said, confused. "I am staying with a friend." "Okay," she said. "I am looking at your file. I see the report from the fire department has already been pinged to our system." "Great," I said. "So how do I start the process?" "I need an advance for temporary housing and clothing. I literally have nothing." There was a long silence on the other end. "Ms. Jenkins," Sarah said slowly, "I am afraid I cannot process a standard rapid claim over the phone for this account." "Why not?" I demanded. Panic flaring again. "I have the premium coverage. It guarantees emergency funds within 24 hours. "Yes, typically that is correct," Sarah said. "However, there is a hold on your policy status." "A hold? What kind of hold?" "I cannot discuss the details over the phone," Sarah said. "But you need to come into the local branch office, the one on 4th Street. "I cannot come in," I said, my voice rising. "I do not have shoes. I do not have a car. I do not have an ID. It burned in the fire." "Ms. Jenkins, you really need to come in," Sarah insisted. Her voice dropped, losing the corporate sheen. "I cannot release any funds until we verify identity and, well, there are some recent changes to the policy documentation that require in-person review." "What changes?" I asked. "I have not changed anything." "I see a modification submitted last week," Sarah said, "regarding the beneficiary and access rights. I did not submit any modification, I said firmly. That is why you need to come in, Sarah said. Look, I probably should not say this, but the hold? It is not just procedural. It involves a cross-reference with another party. What other party? It involves your family, Sarah said. The counterparty on the file update shares your last name, and there is a notation from the fire investigator's office attached to the claim request. My blood ran cold. The fire investigator? I whispered. Please, Ms. Jenkins, Sarah said. Just come to the office. We can sort this out, but we cannot do it over the phone. She hung up. I sat there in the silence of Holly's living room. The phone pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. The relief I had felt at surviving the night evaporated. It involves your family, my mother's visit, the questions about the lock, the questions about my schedule, and now, a change to my policy that I did not make, blocking the money I desperately needed. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, not from the cold this time, from a dawning, horrific realization. The fire had taken my home, but something else, someone else, was trying to take my life. The Apex Mutual office on 4th Street was aggressively sterile. It smelled of lemon floor cleaner and stale coffee, a scent that usually signaled boredom, but today smelled like a trap. I sat in a waiting chair upholstered in scratchy blue fabric, clutching a styrofoam cup of water I did not want. I was wearing Holly's spare clothes, a pair of jeans that were 2 inches too loose at the waist, and a gray sweater that smelled like someone else's fabric softener. I felt like a child playing dress-up, or worse, an imposter in my own life. Every time the automatic glass doors slid open, I flinched. I expected to see my mother. I expected to see Richard. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a physical reminder of the fear that had not left me since I stood on the sidewalk and watched my world burn. Ms. Jenkins? I looked up. A man stood in the doorway of an inner office. He looked to be in his late 40s, with thinning hair and the kind of tired, slump-shouldered posture that comes from years of telling people their tragedies were not covered by paragraph 4, section B. His name tag read, Caleb. That is me, I said. My voice sounded thin in the quiet room. Come on back, Caleb said. He did not smile. There was no customer service brightness in his tone. Only a heavy, reluctant gravity. I followed him down a short hallway lined with motivational posters about security and future-proofing. The irony was bitter enough to taste. We entered his office, a small, windowless box dominated by a large desk piled high with manila folders. He gestured for me to sit. I sat. The woman on the phone said there was a hold, I started, needing to fill the silence. She said it was about a beneficiary change. I just want to clear this up. I did not change anything, Caleb sighed. He sat down and adjusted his glasses. He did not look at me immediately. He looked at his computer screen, clicking the mouse with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Giselle Jenkins, he read. Policy 849. You have been a client with us for 5 years. Never missed a payment. Yes, I said. I am responsible. I can see that, Caleb said. He finally looked at me. His eyes were not hostile, but they were guarded. He looked like a man who was holding a hand grenade and was unsure of when to pull the pin. Ms. Jenkins, the fire at your apartment complex has been categorized as a catastrophic event. Usually, in these cases, we expedite the initial payout for displacement costs. That is standard procedure. That is what I need, I said, leaning forward. I have nothing. Caleb, I am borrowing clothes. I need to put a deposit on a new place. I understand, he said. But we cannot release the funds to you. He reached into a folder on his desk and pulled out a stapled document. He slid it across the laminate surface toward me. This was processed last Tuesday, he said. February 3rd? I looked at the document. It was a standard change of beneficiary and rights of access form. The Apex Mutual logo was at the top. The date stamp was clear. February 3rd, 2026. My eyes scanned down the page to the section titled Primary Beneficiary Designation. There were 2 names typed in the boxes. Angela Halloway. Relationship. Mother, Richard Halloway. Relationship. Stepfather. Next to the allocation percentage. The number was typed clearly. 100%. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, resting on the edge of the desk, went numb. "I did not write this," I whispered. "Read the clause below the names," Caleb said softly. I looked closer. It was a specific rider, one I did not remember ever discussing when I first bought the policy years ago. In the event of accidental death or permanent incapacitation of the policyholder occurring on the insured premises, all policy benefits, including the accidental death indemnity rider, shall be paid immediately to the named beneficiaries. Accidental death, I said. The words felt heavy, like stones in my mouth. Why is there an accidental death rider? This is renter's insurance. You have the Platinum Shield package, Caleb explained. It bundles property protection with a personal injury and accidental death policy. It is a $300,000 payout in the event of a fire-related fatality. $300,000. The number hung in the air between us. $300,000. That was the price tag. That was the value of my life. I looked up at Caleb. "I am not dead," I said. "So why does this matter?" "Just cancel it. I am sitting right here. I am the policyholder. I am revoking this." "It is not that simple," Caleb said. He pointed to the bottom of the page. "Look at the signature." I looked. There, on the line marked Signature of Policyholder, was my name, Giselle Jenkins. It was written in blue ink. It had the slight slant to the right that I had perfected in high school. It had the loop on the G that was my trademark. It had the sharp crossing of the T in the middle of the name. It was my signature. But I had not written it. "That is," I stammered. "That looks like my signature, but it is not mine. I was at work on Tuesday. I was at Redwood and Klein all day. I can prove it. I have badge swipes." Caleb leaned back in his chair. "I believe you, Ms. Jenkins. Or at least, I want to. But from the company's perspective, this is a legally binding document that was submitted and notarized." "Notarized?" I asked. "Who notarized it?" "We have a notary on site," Caleb said. "On site?" I frowned. "You mean—" "This form was not mailed in," Caleb said. He watched me closely, gauging my reaction. "It was not submitted online. It was brought into this office, physically, at 2:15 in the afternoon on Tuesday." The room seemed to tilt. "Someone came here?" "A woman," Caleb said. "She came to the front desk. She had your policy information. She had a copy of your driver's license. She said she was Giselle Jenkins. She said she wanted to update her beneficiary information because she was worried about life's uncertainties." I felt bile rise in my throat. A copy of my driver's license. I thought back to my wallet. It was in my purse. My purse had been in the apartment, but last week my mother had visited. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. Tuesday, the visit. My mother had been in the kitchen while I was in the bathroom. My purse had been on the counter. It would have taken her 10 seconds to take my wallet out, snap a photo of my license with her phone, and put it back. And the signature? She had my birthday cards. She had my lease agreements from when she co-signed for me in college. She had years of documents to study. She had practiced. "She pretended to be me," I said. My voice was trembling. "She came here, to this office, and pretended to be me." "The clerk at the front desk remembers her," Caleb said. He said she was charming. She made a joke about how the parking meters outside were too expensive. She signed the papers right in front of him. "It was my mother," I said. "It was Angela Halloway." Caleb did not confirm or deny it. He just looked at the paper. "If that is true, Ms. Jenkins, this is fraud, massive fraud, but it is also something else." He tapped the section about the $300,000. "This is a motive," he said. "This policy change was made 5 days before the fire. 5 days before a fire that started in the middle of the night. when you were almost certainly going to be asleep. I closed my eyes. I saw the flames again. I saw the smoke curling under the door. They had not just abandoned me. They had set the stage. They had updated the paperwork. They had ensured that if I did not make it out of that apartment, they would be $300,000 richer. My mother's questions suddenly took on a sinister clarity. Are you sure you will be home next week? Do you check the batteries on the smoke detectors? What is the code to the door? She needed to know I would be there. She needed to know the alarm might fail. Or maybe she was checking to see if I would wake up. She needed access. They did this, I whispered. They actually did this. Ms. Jenkins, Caleb said. His voice dropped lower, becoming almost conspiratorial. There is one more thing you need to know. The reason there is a hold on the account is not just the beneficiary mismatch. I opened my eyes. What else? Yesterday morning, Caleb said. Before you even called us, we received a request for information on this policy. From who? I asked. My parents? No, Caleb said. From the city. He turned his computer monitor slightly so I could see the email header open on the screen. The sender address ended in .gov. A fire investigator named Damon Rusk contacted us, Caleb said. He asked specifically if there had been any recent changes to the policy limit or beneficiaries in the last 30 days. He did not tell us why he was asking. He just asked for the records. I stared at the name on the screen. Damon Rusk. The fire investigator thinks this was arson. I realized. He already knows. I cannot speak for the fire department, Caleb said, pulling the folder back toward him. But investigators do not typically check insurance policies on accidental electrical fires unless they find something that does not add up. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional warning. Ms. Jenkins, if this goes the way I think it is going, this is no longer an insurance claim. It is a crime scene, and you are right in the middle of it. I need to talk to him, I said. This investigator. He left his card, Caleb said. He slid a small white business card across the desk. It had the seal of the city fire department and a phone number. If I were you, I would call him, because if your parents, or whoever this woman was, filed this claim expecting a payout, they are going to be calling us very soon to ask why the check has not cleared. And when they do, I have to tell them the policy is under investigation. They will know I survived, I said. They already know. I called them. Then they know their plan failed, Caleb said, which makes them dangerous. People who commit insurance fraud for $300,000 do not usually give up just because the first attempt didn't work. I took the card. My fingers were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Thank you, Caleb, I said. He nodded. I am sorry, Ms. Jenkins. I really am. I have seen people try to cheat the system for a new TV or a car repair, but this, he gestured to the beneficiary form. To bet against your own daughter's life? This is a different kind of evil. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my mind was sharpening. The fog of shock was burning away, replaced by a cold, hard rage. I looked at the signature on the paper one last time, the forgery that was meant to be my death warrant. It is not evil, I said, my voice steady for the first time that day. It is business. That is how they see it. I am just an asset to be liquidated. I turned and walked out of the office. The sterile smell of lemon cleaner no longer made me feel sick. It made me feel focused. I walked out into the cold afternoon air on 4th Street. The wind was still biting, but I barely felt it. I pulled the business card out of my pocket and looked at the number. Damon Rusk, fire investigator. My parents had made a mistake. They thought I was the same Giselle they could manipulate, the daughter who sought their approval, the girl who would cry and ask why they didn't love her. They thought I would crumble, but they forgot what I did for a living. I was a data strategist. I looked for patterns. I found the hidden variables that cause systems to fail, and now I had the data. I dialed the number on the card. This is Rusk, a gruff voice answered on the second ring. Mr. Rusk, I said, My name is Giselle Jenkins. I just left the Apex Mutual office. We need to talk. I have been waiting for your call, he said. Meet me at the diner on 6th and Main in 20 minutes. And come alone. I will be there, I said. I hung up the phone and started walking. I did not have a coat. I did not have a home. I did not have a family. But as I walked down the street, putting one borrowed shoe in front of the other, I realized I had something much more dangerous. I had the truth, and I was going to burn their whole world down with it. The diner on 6th and Main was the kind of place that smelled permanently of bacon grease and stale cigarette smoke. Despite the smoking ban having been in effect for 20 years, it was neutral ground. It was loud enough to mask a conversation, and busy enough that no one paid attention to two people huddled over a laminate table in the back corner. I arrived 3 minutes early, but Damon Rusk was already there. He was easy to spot. He was the only man in the place who looked like he was dissecting the room with his eyes. He sat in a booth facing the door, a half-empty mug of black coffee in front of him. He wore a dark canvas jacket that looked durable, the kind of clothing chosen for utility rather than fashion. His face was lined, etched with the kind of fatigue that comes from seeing things that should not exist. He looked like a man who had spent 30 years sifting through ashes looking for the truth. I slid into the booth opposite him. The vinyl seat was cold and cracked. "Ms. Jenkins," he said. It was not a question. His voice was gravelly, low, and devoid of pleasantries. "Mr. Rusk?" I replied. I kept my hands in my lap to hide the fact that they were trembling. "You spoke to the insurance company?" "I did," he said. He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving my face. "They told you about the policy change?" "Yes," I said. "They told me—" "Good," Rusk said. "That saves us 20 minutes of catch-up." He reached down into a leather satchel sitting on the floor next to him and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He placed it on the table between us. He did not open it immediately. He rested his hand on it, his fingers thick and calloused. "I have been a fire investigator for 22 years. Ms. Jenkins," he said. "I have seen fires started by faulty wiring. I have seen fires started by candles left unattended. I have seen fires started by kids playing with matches. And I have seen fires that were started because someone wanted a building to stop existing." He tapped the envelope. "Do you know how fire moves?" he asked. "Up and out," I said, remembering a safety pamphlet from work. "Ideally," he said. "But fire is also lazy. It follows the path of least resistance. It follows the fuel. When a fire starts naturally, say from a short circuit in a wall, it usually smolders for a while inside the insulation before it breaks out. It leaves a specific burn pattern. We call it a V pattern. The base of the V points to the origin." He opened the envelope and slid 3 photographs across the table. I forced myself to look. The first photo was a nightmare in grayscale. It was the corner of my living room, but it looked like the inside of a charcoal grill. The walls were black and blistered. The floor was a crater of debris. But in the center of the devastation, there was a clear, sharp V-shape etched into the wall, pointing down to the baseboard. "That is the origin," Rusk said, pointing a finger at the bottom of the V. "Right there, behind the armchair. There was an electrical outlet there, correct?" "Yes," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I used it for the floor lamp." "We recovered the outlet," Rusk said. He slid a second photo over. It showed a mangled piece of melted plastic and metal, tagged with an evidence number. "Here's the thing about electrical fires. When wires short out, they arc. That arcing creates beads of melted copper. We call it arcing evidence. It is the fingerprint of an electrical failure." He leaned forward, his face inches from the center of the table. "There was no arcing on those wires. Ms. Jenkins, the circuit did not fail. The breaker did not trip until the heat melted the insulation off the wires from the outside in." I looked up at him, my stomach twisting. "What does that mean?" "It means the fire did not start in the outlet," Rusk said. "It started at the outlet. Something was plugged into it. Or something was placed right next to it." He slid the third photo. It was a close-up of the floorboards directly beneath the outlet. The wood was not just charred, it was alligator-skinned. The cracks deep and shiny. "See that sheen?" Rusk asked. "That is what happens when wood burns too fast and too hot. Normal wood burns at a steady rate, but this section reached temperatures of over 1,500 degrees in under 3 minutes. That does not happen with a floor lamp. That happens when you have help." "Help?" I repeated. "An accelerant," Rusk said, "or a device designed to ignite an accelerant. We found traces of a chemical signature on the subflooring that does not match any cleaning product or furniture varnish. We are still running the gas chromatography. But my nose knows the smell. It smells like lighter fluid mixed with a timer." I felt the blood drain from my face. I had known it. I had felt it in my gut since the phone call with Caleb, but hearing it from a man who read ash like a language made it terrifyingly real. "So it was arson," I said. "I am not calling it arson publicly yet," Rusk corrected. "Not until the lab work is 100%. But between you and me? Yes, someone plugged a device into that outlet, set a timer, and walked away. They wanted to make sure the fire started deep in the room, away from the door, to block your exit. They wanted to maximize the heat before the alarms went off." He sat back, crossing his arms over his chest. The waitress came by and refilled his coffee. He waited until she was gone before speaking again. "Now we get to the hard part," he said. "Access." He looked at me with a gaze that was heavy with implication. There was no sign of forced entry. "Ms. Jenkins." The front door was still locked when the fire department arrived. They had to break it down. That means whoever set this did not break in. They let themselves in. He paused, letting the silence stretch. "Who has a key?" he asked. "Who has the code?" I looked down at my hands. I remembered the conversation in my kitchen, the casual way my mother had asked about the smart lock, just in case of an emergency. "I live alone," I said. "I do not give out keys." "Someone had one," Rusk said, "or they knew the code." "My mother," I said. The words tasted like ash. "Last Tuesday, she visited. She asked for the code. She said she wanted it in case I slipped in the shower." Rusk did not look surprised. He did not look shocked. He just nodded, a slow, grim movement. "Tuesday," he said. "February 3rd? "Yes," I said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it and placed it on top of the photos of my burnt apartment. It was a printout of a digital log. "I subpoenaed the building management for the electronic lock logs for the entire week leading up to the fire," Rusk said. "Your lock is a digital model. It records every entry and exit. It records which code is used." He pointed to a line on the spreadsheet. "February 3rd, 1:38 p.m., entry, code used, user 2. User 2, Rusk said. "That is the guest code you set up?" "Yes," I whispered. "I set it up that morning for her." "Look at the exit time," Rusk said. I followed his finger across the page. February 3rd, 4:51 p.m., exit, manual lock. "She was there for 3 hours and 13 minutes, Rusk said. "That is a long time for a casual visit, especially if you were not there." "I was at work," I said. "I left at 8 in the morning. I did not get home until 7. "So she was alone in your apartment for over 3 hours, Rusk stated. "Plenty of time to look through paperwork, plenty of time to take a picture of your ID, plenty of time to study the layout, plenty of time to test the outlets." He tapped the paper again. "But here is the kicker," he said. "I also pulled the security footage from the lobby. The camera shows you leaving at 8:10 in the morning. At 1:38, a woman buzzes herself in. She is wearing a large hat and sunglasses, but she matches the description of your mother. She is carrying a very large black tote bag. It looked heavy." A tote bag. My mother never carried large bags. She was a woman of small clutches and elegant purses. "And when she left?" I asked, dreading the answer. "At 4:51, Rusk said. "She walked out, still wearing the hat, still wearing the sunglasses." He looked me dead in the eye. But the bag looked lighter, much lighter. I felt sick, physically sick. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. The image was clear in my mind. My mother, walking into my home with a bag full of… what? A timer? Accelerant? A device she bought with cash? And then leaving. The bag empty. The trap set. She planted it, I said. My voice was rising. Hysteria bubbling up. She planted it days in advance. She set it to go off on the night she knew I would be home. She knew I had the conference prep. She asked me about it. "Keep your voice down," Rusk said sharply. I snapped my mouth shut. Looking around the diner. No one was looking at us. "Listen to me very carefully. Giselle," Rusk said. He used my first name for the first time. It was a tactical choice, a way to anchor me. "You are right. All the pieces fit. The insurance change, the visit, the code, the fire. It is an orchestrated attempt on your life for financial gain. I have to call the police," I said. "I have to tell them. She tried to kill me." "No," Rusk said. "You do not." "What?" I stared at him. "Why not?" "Because right now, all we have is circumstantial evidence," Rusk said. "We have a fire that looks like arson. We have a policy change that looks suspicious. We have a mother who visited, but we do not have the device yet. We have traces. If you go to the police now, or if you confront her, she will lawyer up. She will say she visited you to clean. She will say the insurance change was a mistake, or that you asked her to do it. She will say the bag held laundry." He leaned in closer. "If you spook them now, they will destroy anything they have left. They will wipe their phones. They will burn the receipts. They will get their stories straight, and you will be the unstable daughter who is accusing her grieving parents of a crime." I remembered the phone call. Not our problem. They were already setting the narrative. They were already painting me as dramatic. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Do I just let them get away with it?" "No," Rusk said. His eyes were hard like flint. "You let me do my job. I need to find the physical mechanism. I have a team sifting through the debris in your bedroom right now. We are looking for the timer. We are looking for the remains of the ignition source. If we find that, and we can link it to them, we have them. And until then?" "Until then," Rusk said, "you do nothing. You play dead. Or rather, you play the victim. You let them think they are safe. You let them think the insurance money is just delayed by red tape. When people think they have won, they get sloppy. They make mistakes. They talk on the phone. They spend money they do not have yet." He slid the photos and the log back into the envelope and pushed it toward me. "Take copies," he said. "Keep them safe. Do not show them to anyone, not even your friend Holly." "You know about Holly?" I asked. "I am an investigator," he said simply. "I know where you are staying. It is safe for now, but you need to watch your back. These people, your parents, they crossed a line that most people cannot even see. Once you cross that line, you do not go back." I took the envelope. It felt heavy, heavier than paper should feel. It felt like a weapon. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "You could have just filed the report and let the police handle it." Rusk finished his coffee and set the mug down with a clink. "I have a daughter," he said. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. The way he said it told me everything. He looked at the burnt outlet in the photo one last time, a flicker of genuine anger crossing his face. "And I hate people who play with fire." He stood up, threw a $5 bill on the table, and buttoned his jacket. "I will be in touch," he said. "Do not call them. If they call you, answer. Be sad. Be confused. Be exactly who they think you are, but do not let them know you are on to them." He turned and walked out of the diner, blending instantly into the gray afternoon. I sat there for a long time. I touched the envelope. I traced the edge of the photo where my apartment used to be. 10 minutes ago. I was a woman who had lost her things. I was a victim of a tragedy. I was sad. I was grieving. But as I slid out of the booth and walked toward the door, I realized I wasn't grieving anymore. The sadness had evaporated. burned away by the heat of the truth. I walked out onto the street. The wind was still cold, but I didn't shiver. I looked at the people walking by, strangers with their heads down, rushing to get out of the cold. They looked normal. The world looked normal, but it wasn't. My parents were not just cold. They were not just distant. They were hunters. They had come into my home, eaten my food, smiled at my face, and planted a bomb in my wall. They had looked at me and seen a paycheck. I clutched the envelope to my chest. Rusk was right. I had to be patient. I had to be quiet. I had to let them think they were the predators. But as I turned the corner toward Holly's house, I felt a new sensation rising in my chest. It wasn't fear. It was a cold, calculating clarity. I was a data strategist. I solved problems. And for the first time in my life, I realized that my parents were not the authority figures I had to please. They were just a variable in the equation, and I was going to solve for X. I sat at Holly's small kitchen table, staring at my phone. It was sitting on the placemat like a loaded gun. Outside, the morning sun was trying to break through the winter gray. But inside, the air felt heavy and pressurized. Damon Rusk's warning was echoing in my head. Play the victim. Be exactly who they think you are. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that did not smell of smoke for the first time in days. I needed to make the call. I needed to hear her voice. Not to beg for help this time, but to calibrate the data. I needed to see how tight the trap was wound. I dialed my mother. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was not the groggy, irritated mumble of the night of the fire. It was bright, alert, and terrifyingly normal. "Giselle?" she said. "Oh, thank goodness. Richard and I have been sitting here just sick with worry. Why have you not called? We did not know where you were." The lie was so smooth it almost slid past me. They knew exactly where I was. I had texted them. I had called them screaming for help. "I am sorry, Mom," I said, pitching my voice to sound shaky and fragile. "I have just been... It is a lot. I'm staying at a friend's house. I lost my phone charger. I just got powered up." "Well, you are safe," she said. "That is the important thing. Material things can be replaced. You know that, right? We just want you to focus on healing." "I know," I said. "It is just hard. I went to the insurance office yesterday." There was a pause, a tiny, microscopic silence on the line. "Oh?" she said. The brightness dimmed slightly. "Did you? What did they say? Are they cutting the check?" "It is complicated," I said, letting a note of confusion creep into my tone. "They said there is a hold on the policy, something about paperwork, and then this man called me, a fire investigator." "An investigator?" The tone changed instantly. It went from maternal concern to sharp, jagged steel. "What investigator? What is his name?" "I think his name is Rusk," I said. "He wants to ask me questions about the electrical outlets. He thinks it might not be accidental." "Do not talk to him," my mother snapped. The speed of her reaction was breathtaking. "Giselle, listen to me. Do not say a single word to that man." "Why not?" I asked, playing the naive daughter. "If he can help me get the claim processed." "He is not there to help you," she interrupted. "He is there to deny the claim. That is what they do. They look for reasons to blame the tenant so they do not have to pay. If you talk to him, you might say something wrong. You are emotional right now. You are in shock. You could implicate yourself without meaning to." "Implicate myself?" I asked. "Mom, I did not do anything." "I know that," she said, her voice softening, but the edge remained. "But you know how you get. You get flustered. You get dramatic. You need a lawyer before you speak to anyone official. Richard knows a good attorney. We will handle it. Just promise me you will not talk to this Rusk person." I gripped the phone tighter. A normal mother would say, "Tell them the truth so we can find out what happened." A guilty mother says, "Lawyer up?" "Okay," I lied. "Okay, Mom, I will wait." "Good girl," she said. "We love you. Giselle, We are just trying to protect you. I hung up. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer effort of holding back the rage. She was already positioning herself. She was not protecting me from the insurance company. She was protecting herself from the truth. But I did not realize how far the protection extended until the next morning. I was waking up on Holly's couch, trying to untangle myself from the blanket, when my phone buzzed. It was an incoming call from Aunt Kendra. Kendra was my mother's younger sister. She lived 2 towns over. We spoke maybe twice a year, usually at Christmas and Thanksgiving, where she would ask me why I was not married yet and make passive-aggressive comments about my career choice. "Hello?" I answered, clearing the sleep from my throat. "Giselle," Kendra sighed. It was a long, theatrical sigh. "Oh, honey, You heard about the fire?" "I heard about everything," she said. "Angela called me last night. She was in tears. Giselle, absolute tears." "Mom was crying?" I asked, wary. "She is worried sick about your state of mind," Kendra said. The concern in her voice was thick and cloying, like syrup covering rot. "She told me what you said to her, about the conspiracy, about the people out to get you." I froze. "I never said anything about a conspiracy." "She said you sounded manic," Kendra continued, ignoring me. "She said you were rambling about insurance plots and people breaking into your apartment. Giselle, honey, trauma can do terrible things to the brain. It is called a stress response. You start inventing enemies because the reality of bad luck is too hard to accept." My stomach dropped. My mother was not just hiding. She was broadcasting. She was seeding the ground. She was calling the family, one by one, and painting a picture of a daughter who had cracked under pressure. "I am not manic, Aunt Kendra," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I am actually very calm. I just have questions about why the fire started." "See," Kendra said, "that is the paranoia talking. Angela said you have been under so much pressure at that job of yours. High stress, long hours, and now this? It is the straw that broke the camel's back. We just want you to get help. Richard thinks maybe a facility, just for a few days, to rest." A facility. The word hung in the air, cold and sterile. They did not just want to discredit me. They wanted to incapacitate me. If I was in a mental health facility, I could not talk to Rusk. I could not hire a lawyer. And most importantly, anything I said about my mother entering my apartment would be dismissed as the ravings of a patient. "I am fine. Kendra," I said coldly. "I do not need a facility. I need new shoes." "Do not be difficult," Kendra snapped, her mask slipping for a second. "Your mother is trying to help you. You have always been like this, so intense, so difficult. Just listen to her." I hung up on her. I did not say goodbye. I threw the phone onto the cushion next to me. I felt like the walls were closing in. It was a classic pincer movement. On one side, the arson. On the other, the smear campaign. I needed to work. I needed normalcy. I opened the laptop I had borrowed from Holly. I could not log into the secure Redwood and Klein servers without my dual-factor authentication token, which was currently melted slag in my apartment. But I could access my webmail. I logged in. There were dozens of emails. Condolences from coworkers who had heard the news. Automated notifications about missed meetings. But there was one email that stood out. It was from the Human Resources Department. The subject line was, "Urgent. Meeting regarding your status." My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked it. "Dear Ms. Jenkins, we were devastated to hear about the incident at your residence. Please know that Redwood and Klein stands with you during this difficult time. However, we need to schedule a mandatory video conference with you regarding your current fitness for duty. We have received an anonymous concern regarding your recent behavioral stability and potential erratic conduct. Given the sensitive nature of your role as a senior data strategist and your access to high-level client data, we are required to investigate any reports that suggest a compromise in judgment or mental acuity. Your access to the mainframe has been temporarily suspended pending this evaluation. Regards, Linda Trask, VP of Human Resources. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. An anonymous concern. It was not anonymous. It was them. It had to be. My mother or Richard had called my workplace. They had found the number for HR. They had whispered the same poison they fed Aunt Kendra. She is unstable. She is having a breakdown. She is paranoid. At Redwood and Klein. Erratic behavior was a death sentence. We handled millions of dollars in predictive modeling. We dealt with corporate secrets. If there was even a whisper that a strategist was losing their grip on reality, they were considered a liability. They were cutting off my supply lines. If I lost my job, I lost my income. If I lost my income, I could not afford a lawyer. If I lost my professional reputation, I became an unreliable witness in my own life. I stood up and paced Holly's small living room. I felt like an animal in a cage. They were systematically dismantling me. First my home, then my safety, now my name. They wanted me to scream. They wanted me to call them and scream and threaten and cry, so they could record it and play it for the police and say, "See? We told you she was crazy." I stopped pacing. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. A mail truck was driving by. A woman was walking a golden retriever. The world was continuing. Indifferent to the fact that my life was being surgically destroyed, I forced myself to breathe. In for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Out for 4. I was a strategist. When the datasets changed, you did not panic. You adjusted the model. They were building a narrative that I was alone, unstable, and paranoid. The only way to counter that was to prove I was none of those things. I needed a team. I could not do this alone. My parents were counting on my isolation. They were counting on the fact that I was an only child, that I was private, that I did not ask for help. I picked up the phone again. First, I texted Holly, "I need you, not just for a couch. I need a witness. I need someone who sees me every day to go on record saying I am sane. Can you do that?" The reply came back in 10 seconds. "I will swear on a stack of Bibles you are the most boringly sane person I know. Just tell me who I need to yell at." One ally. Next, I pulled out the business card Damon Rusk had given me. I dialed his number. "Rusk," he answered. "It is Giselle," I said. "You were right. The second phase has started." "What did they do?" Rusk asked. "They are gaslighting the family," I said. "And they called my job. They are trying to get me fired for mental instability. They are trying to discredit me before you can file your report." "Smart," Rusk grunted. "Evil, but smart. If you are discredited, any testimony you give about the key code or the bag becomes suspect. I need a lawyer," I said. "Not the family friend my mother suggested. I need a shark. I need someone who understands fraud and does not care about family feelings." "I know a woman," Rusk said. "Her name is Nora Vance. She used to work for the district attorney's office prosecuting insurance scams. She went private 5 years ago. She hates liars more than I do. I will text you her number." "Thank you," I said. "Giselle," Rusk added, his voice serious. "Do not reply to the HR email yet. Do not talk to your aunt. Do not talk to your mother." Radio silence. "Let them think their plan is working. Let them think you are curled up in a ball somewhere." "I understand," I said. "We are going to catch them," Rusk said. "But we have to be faster than they are." I hung up. A second later, a text message appeared with a phone number and a name. Nora Vance. I sat back down at the table. I had an investigator. I had a character witness. And soon, I would have a lawyer. I looked at the HR email on the laptop screen. Fitness for duty. I would show them fitness for duty. I closed the laptop with a snap. My parents thought they were burying me. They thought that by taking my home, my money, and my reputation, they would leave me with nothing. They thought they could erase Giselle Jenkins and replace her with a tragedy. But they forgot one thing. When you burn everything down, the only thing left is the foundation. And my foundation was made of something harder than they realized. They did not just want the $300,000. I realize that now. The money was the motive, yes. But the method? The method was total annihilation. They wanted to make sure that even if I survived the fire, I would be so broken, so isolated, and so doubted by society that I would never be able to stand up and point a finger at them. They wanted to make me a ghost before I was even dead. I dialed the number for Nora Vance. Law Office of Nora Vance, a receptionist answered. My name is Giselle Jenkins, I said. My voice was steady, my hands were still. I am being framed for my own murder by my parents. I have a fire investigator who can back me up, and I have money to pay a retainer as soon as my next paycheck clears. I need to see Nora Vance today. There was a pause. Can you be here in 1 hour? The receptionist asked. I will be there in 30 minutes, I said. I stood up. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked pale. But I did not look crazy. I looked like someone who was done being a victim. I grabbed Holly's spare keys. I walked out the door. Let them tell their stories. Let them spread their rumors. Let them think they had won. I was building a new story, and in my story, the ending was going to be very, very different. The temporary office for the property management company was located in a portable trailer sitting in the parking lot of a strip mall 2 blocks away from the charred skeleton of my apartment building. It smelled of cheap particle board and the stale, nervous sweat of people who were afraid of being sued. Mr. Landry, the building manager, looked like he had aged 10 years in the last 48 hours. He was a man who usually cared about noise complaints and recycling bin violations. Now, he was dealing with a catastrophic structural failure and a fire investigator who looked like he ate concrete for breakfast. Damon Rusk did not sit down. He stood behind Mr. Landry's chair, staring at the computer monitor with a predatory intensity. I stood next to Rusk, my arms crossed tightly over my chest, trying to stop the shivering that had nothing to do with the temperature. Pull it up, Rusk said. His voice was not a request. It was a command. Landry's fingers trembled slightly as he navigated the security software. I have the backup servers from the cloud, Landry said. The on-site hard drives were melted, obviously, but the system uploads motion-triggered events every 10 minutes. We should have everything from the hallway cameras. Tuesday, Rusk said. February 3rd. Start at 1:30 in the afternoon. The screen flickered. A grainy, black and white feed appeared. It showed the familiar hallway of the 3rd floor. I stared at the gray carpet, the numbered doors, the potted plant that Mrs. Higgins from apartment 302 used to overwater. It looked so normal. It looked so intact. It was a ghost image of a place that no longer existed. Fast forward, Rusk ordered. The timestamp in the corner of the screen blurred. 1:32, 1:35, 1:37. Stop, Rusk snapped. Landry hit the space bar. The video froze. At the far end of the hallway, the elevator doors were opening. A figure stepped out. It was a woman. She was wearing a wide-brimmed felt hat that obscured the top half of her face and large, dark sunglasses. She wore a long trench coat that was belted tightly at the waist. To a stranger, she might have looked like any anonymous visitor, but I knew the walk. I knew the way she held her chin, slightly elevated, as if she were inspecting the quality of the air. That is her, I said. My voice was flat. That is my mother. Look at her right shoulder, Rusk said. I looked. Hanging from her shoulder, weighing her down noticeably, was a large black bag. It was not a purse. It was too big for a purse. It looked like a weekender travel bag, or perhaps a heavy-duty tool tote made of thick canvas. It was bulky. It banged against her hip as she walked. Do you recognize that bag? Rusk asked. No, I said. She usually carries a designer handbag. Small, leather. That looks utilitarian. Check the time, Rusk said. I looked at the corner of the screen. 1:38 p.m. Play, Rusk said. We watched as the woman on the screen walked down the hallway. She did not look around. She walked with purpose. She stopped in front of my door, apartment 304. She did not knock. She did not hesitate. She lifted her hand to the digital lock pad. I watched her fingers punch in the code. 5, 2, 8, 9. The light on the lock turned green. She opened the door and stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind her. 1:39 p.m., Landry noted. The log confirms entry, user 2. Fast forward, Rusk said again. Go to 4:50. Landry scrubbed the video timeline forward. The shadows in the hallway lengthened as the afternoon sun shifted outside the windows. A neighbor walked by with a dog. A delivery person dropped a package at the end of the hall. The door to my apartment remained closed. Stop, Rusk said. The timestamp read 4:51 p.m. The door to 304 opened. My mother stepped out. She was still wearing the hat. She was still wearing the sunglasses. She turned and pulled the door shut, checking the handle to make sure it was locked. Pause it, Rusk said. The image froze. Rusk leaned in, his finger hovering inches from the screen. What is missing, Giselle? He asked. I stared at the image. I looked at her coat. I looked at her hat. I looked at her posture. And then I looked at her shoulder. It was empty. My breath caught in my throat. The large, bulky black bag was gone. She was carrying a small clutch in her hand, probably retrieved from inside the coat. But the heavy canvas bag she had hauled in 3 hours earlier was nowhere to be seen. She left it, I whispered. Run the other cameras, Rusk told Landry. Check the service elevator. Check the stairwell exits. Check the garage feed. I want to know if she dropped that bag off somewhere else. Landry spent the next 10 minutes clicking through camera feeds. We watched my mother walk to the elevator. Empty hands. We watched her exit the lobby. Empty hands. We watched her get into her car. A silver sedan parked just outside the main entrance. She did not open the trunk. She just got in the driver's seat and drove away. She did not take it with her, Landry said, looking confused. She must have left it in the apartment. Why would she leave a bag? I asked, though the cold logic was already forming in my mind. If it was laundry, she would have taken it. If it was groceries, she would not have stayed for 3 hours. If it was a gift, why did she not tell me? Because it was not a gift, Rusk said. He straightened up, turning away from the screen to face me. Giselle, think about the fire. Think about the burn pattern I showed you. The intensity, the speed. You do not get that kind of heat from a spark. You get it from fuel. He gestured back to the screen where my mother stood frozen, empty-handed. That bag contained the accelerant, Rusk said. His voice was clinical, stripping away the last illusion of familial love. It likely contained a liquid fuel source, maybe high-grade kerosene or an industrial solvent, and a timing device. She brought it in. She spent 3 hours setting it up, and she left it there, hidden behind the chair, plugged into the outlet, waiting for the timer to tick down. I felt the room spin. I reached out and grabbed the back of Landry's chair to steady myself. 3 hours. She had been in my home for 3 hours. I tried to imagine what she was doing during that time. Was she sitting on my sofa, watching TV, waiting for the right moment to plant a bomb? Was she looking at my photos? Was she drinking my water? And then, the memory I had suppressed came rushing back. The details of her visit the week before suddenly sharpened into high-definition clarity. I remembered her walking around the living room. She had not been restless. She had been pacing. She had been measuring. This chair, she had said, tapping the back of the heavy armchair that sat against the wall. It is very close to the wall. Giselle, do you ever move it? No, I had replied. It is too heavy. She had nodded. She had looked pleased. She had asked about the outlet. Is this one working? The one back here? I feel like these old buildings have bad wiring. She had even crouched down. I thought she was picking up lint from the carpet. But she had been checking the clearance. She had been checking to see if there was enough space behind the chair to hide a large, black bag so that it would not be seen if I walked into the room. She was scouting, I said. My voice sounded hollow. The week before. She was not visiting me. She was measuring the blast radius. She wanted to make sure the bag would fit behind the chair. And she needed to know you would be there, Rusk added. That is why she asked about your schedule. She timed the device for 2 in the morning because she knew you would be asleep. She knew the smoke would disorient you. She knew the location of the fire would cut off your path to the living room window. She trapped me, I whispered. Mr. Landry, Rusk said, turning back to the manager. I need a copy of this footage. I need the raw file, uncompressed, with the metadata and the timestamps intact, and I need the logs exported to a secure drive. I can do that, Landry stammered. He looked at me with horror in his eyes. He had met my mother. He had let her into the building in the past. He was realizing, just like I was, that he had held the door open for a monster. Ms. Jenkins, I am so sorry. I had no idea. Do not apologize, I said. Just give us the files. Rusk waited until the transfer was complete. He pulled the USB drive out of the computer and put it in his pocket. We have it, Rusk said to me. We have the timeline. We have the entry. We have the exit. We have the missing object. This is no longer circumstantial. Giselle, this is physical evidence. She cannot say she was just visiting. You do not visit for 3 hours and leave a suitcase behind unless you never plan on coming back to get it. She cannot act her way out of this, I said. I looked at the screen one last time. I looked at the image of the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the woman who had taught me how to tie my shoes, who had attended my graduation, who had called me on my birthday. And then I looked at the empty space on her shoulder where the bag used to be. That empty space was the smoking gun. It was the proof that she had walked in with a weapon and walked out with a clean conscience. No, Rusk said. She cannot act her way out, but she will try. She will say the bag was full of old clothes she donated to you. She will say she left it in the closet. She will say she forgot it. But the bag was not found, I said. You said the debris was sifted. If it was clothes, there would be zippers. There would be buttons. There would be the bag frame. Exactly, Rusk said. We found traces of a melted polymer that is consistent with a heavy-duty tool bag, and we found the timer parts. We connect the timer to the bag, and the bag to her, and the loop is closed. We walked out of the trailer into the cold afternoon air. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the asphalt. I felt different. When I had walked into that trailer, I was a victim. I was a woman whose mother hated her enough to kill her. I was hurt. I was confused. But now? Now I was something else. I had the data. I had the visual confirmation. I had the timestamps. I had the logic. My mother was a storyteller. She was spinning a tale to the family, to the HR department, to the insurance company. She was telling them I was crazy. She was telling them I was paranoid. She was using words to paint over the truth. But I had numbers. 1:38, 4:51, 3 hours and 13 minutes. Numbers did not lie. Numbers did not gaslight. Numbers did not pretend to love you while they burned your house down. I looked at Rusk. What is the next step? I asked. Now we wait for the lab, Rusk said. We need the chemical match on the accelerant to prove what was in the bag. Once we have that, we have probable cause for an arrest warrant. And until then? Until then, Rusk said. You let her keep talking. The more she talks, the more she digs. Every time she tells someone you are crazy, she adds another layer to her own motive. She is trying to discredit the only witness to her crime. It is a classic move, and it is going to be her downfall. I nodded. I reached into my pocket and touched the cold plastic of the phone. I wanted to call her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I had seen the bag. I wanted to tell her that I knew about the 3 hours. But I did not. I was a strategist, and a strategist never reveals their hand until the trap is fully set. Let her talk, I said softly. Let her tell the whole world I'm crazy. Because when the video comes out, the only thing people are going to see is a woman walking into her daughter's home with a bomb on her shoulder. Rusk cracked a rare, grim smile. Now you are thinking like an investigator, he said. We parted ways in the parking lot. I watched him drive away in his unmarked sedan. I stood alone for a moment, looking toward the blackened ruin of my apartment building in the distance. They had taken my past. They had burned my memories. But they had left the cameras rolling, and that was a mistake they were going to regret for the rest of their lives. Nora Vance's office was not designed to make clients feel comfortable. It was designed to make the opposition feel small. Located on the 44th floor of a Glass Needle in the financial district, the room was an expanse of chrome, black leather, and a view of the city that made the cars below look like toys. I sat in a chair that cost more than my first car, watching Nora Vance study the beneficiary form. She was a woman who looked like she had been carved out of marble and dressed in Italian wool. Damon Rusk had been right. She was not a handholder. She was a weapon. She had been silent for 6 minutes. Finally, she placed a magnifying loupe over the signature line, the line where Giselle Jenkins was scrawled in blue ink. "Come here," Nora said. Her voice was cool and devoid of inflection. I stood up and walked around the massive obsidian desk. I leaned over her shoulder. Through the glass of the loupe, the ink strokes looked like rivers on a map. "Tell me what you see," Nora commanded. "I see my name," I said. "I see the loop on the G. I see the cross on the T. It looks like my handwriting." "Look closer," she said. She took a silver pen and pointed to the curve of the S. "Right there. Do you see that tiny pool of ink? And another one at the bottom of the E?" I squinted. There were microscopic blobs where the line was slightly thicker, as if the pen had rested on the paper for a fraction of a second too long. "I see them," I said. "Those are called hesitation marks," Nora said. She straightened up, removing the loupe. "When you sign your own name, Giselle, you do it using muscle memory. It is a ballistic movement. Your hand knows the path. You do not think about the shape of the letters. You just execute. The pen moves at a consistent speed, depositing a consistent layer of ink." She tapped the document with a manicured fingernail. "A forger cannot do that. Even a good one. A forger is drawing, not writing. They have to look at the mental image of the signature they are copying. Then look at their hand. Then look back. The brain has to process the shape. That processing takes milliseconds. But in those milliseconds, the hand stops moving. The ink bleeds. It creates a hesitation mark." She looked at me, her eyes sharp and predatory. "This was not written by a shaky hand, Giselle. It was written by a careful one. Someone was trying very, very hard to be you, and that effort is exactly what gave them away." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I imagined my mother sitting at a table, practicing my name over and over again, trying to get the curve just right so she could steal my life. "Is that enough?" I asked. "Is that enough to prove fraud?" "In a civil court? Maybe," Nora said. "But we are not aiming for civil court. We are aiming for a criminal indictment, and for that, we need more than ink blots. We need a face." She walked over to a sidebar and picked up a file folder. "Rusk sent me the preliminary report," she said. "But I did some digging of my own this morning. I have a contact at Apex Mutual. I asked them to pull the desk log for the day this form was submitted." She opened the file. Inside was a sworn affidavit from a man named Kevin, the front desk clerk at the insurance office. "Kevin remembers that Tuesday very well," Nora said. "He remembers it because it was a slow day. He remembers a woman coming in. She told him a story. She said she was there on behalf of her daughter." I closed my eyes. "Let me guess. She said I was busy." "She said you were overwhelmed," Nora corrected. "She said you were working so hard at your big corporate job that you did not have time for the little things." She played the role of the saintly, helpful mother perfectly. She told Kevin that she just wanted to make sure her little girl was protected. She even asked Kevin about his own mother. She charmed him. "That is her," I said bitterly. "That is Angela Holloway. She can charm the skin off a snake." "Kevin identified her," Nora said. She pulled out a sheet of paper with 6 photographs arranged in a grid. They were driver's license photos of women in their 50s with similar features. We did a standard photo lineup with the clerk this morning, Nora said. We did not tell him who we were looking for. We just asked if any of these women visited his counter on February 3rd. She pointed to image number 4. He picked her out in 3 seconds, Nora said. He said, "That is the lady." She was wearing a nice hat. I looked at the photo of my mother. It was an old picture, maybe 5 years old, but the smile was the same. It was the smile she used when she wanted something. "So we have her," I said. "We have the signature. We have the witness. We have the video from the apartment. We have the executioner," Nora said. "But we do not have the architect." I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "Look at the form again," Nora said. She flipped the beneficiary document over to the back page, where the identification was attached. It was a photocopy of my driver's license, but it was terrible quality. The image was grainy, high contrast, and dark. You could read the name and the address, and you could see the general shape of the face, but the details were blown out. "Why is it so bad?" I asked. "Modern copiers are better than this." "Exactly," Nora said. "This was not a mistake. This was a setting. Someone set the contrast to maximum and the brightness to low. Why? To hide the expiration date? No. To hide the microtext security features? Maybe." She leaned back against her desk. "But more importantly, look at the form itself. This is not the standard change of beneficiary form you download from the website. This is Form 802 Bravo. It is an internal agent form. It bypasses the standard 30-day waiting period for policy shifts." I stared at her. "How did she get an internal form?" "She didn't," Nora said. "Your mother is a housewife, correct? She volunteers at the library. She does not know insurance codes. She does not know about immediate effect riders. She does not know how to manipulate a photocopier to obfuscate security features without making the document unreadable." The realization hit me like a physical blow. "Richard," I whispered. "Your stepfather," Nora said. "He works in finance, does he not?" "He is a loan officer," I said. "He deals with contracts all day." "He knows the system," Nora said. "He knows that if you submit a standard form, it triggers a confirmation letter to the registered address. But if you use the agent form, the confirmation goes to the agent on file, and if you pay a little extra attention to the routing number—" "He guided her," I said. "He did not just drive the getaway car. He drew the map." "It fits the profile," Nora said. "Fraud rings often operate in pairs. One person handles the technical side, the paperwork, the legal loopholes. The other person handles the social engineering, the face-to-face deception. Richard knew he could not walk into that office pretending to be you. He needed a woman. He needed your mother." I felt a wave of nausea. It was one thing to think my parents were greedy. It was another to realize they were a professional team. They had sat down at their kitchen table, perhaps over dinner, and planned this. Richard had printed the forms. He had told her what to say to the clerk. He had coached her on how to forge my signature. "They are going to get away with it, aren't they?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "Richard is too smart. He did not sign anything. He was not on the camera." Nora Vance smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that did not reach her eyes. "Smart people are the easiest to catch, Giselle," she said, "because they think they are smarter than everyone else. They think they have covered every angle, but they always forget the human element." She walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. Her grip was firm. "Richard and Angela think you are weak," she said. "They think you are the emotional, dramatic daughter who falls apart when things go wrong. They are banking on you being a mess. They expect you to cry. They expect you to scream." "I want to scream," I admitted. "Do not," Nora commanded. "This is the most important advice I am going to give you, and I am billing you $400 an hour for it. So listen closely. You must not explode." She walked back to her chair and sat down, crossing her legs. "If you confront them now, if you scream at them about the forgery and the camera and the clerk, Richard will panic. He will destroy the laptop he used to print that form. He will shred the files. He will come up with a story about how he was just trying to help you organize your finances. So what do? You let them think they are winning, Nora said. You let them think the insurance money is coming. You let them think you are confused and sad and leaning on them for support. You need to make them feel safe. Because when people feel safe, they get sloppy. They talk on the phone. They text each other. They spend money they do not have. It is a trap, I said. It is a pressure cooker, Nora corrected. We are going to seal the lid and turn up the heat. We are going to let the insurance company stall the check. We are going to let Rusk take his time with the lab results. And we are going to wait for them to crack. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a photo of my mother and me, taken 3 Christmases ago. We were smiling. I looked happy. I looked like I had no idea that the woman next to me would one day try to incinerate me for a payout. It is her, I said. Answer it, Nora said. Put it on speaker. And remember, you are the victim. You are sad. You are grateful. I took a deep breath. I pressed the green button and the speaker icon. Hello? I said. My voice wavered perfectly. Giselle, darling. My mother's voice filled the high-tech office. Oh, I am so glad I caught you. How are you holding up? I am. Hanging in there, I said. I am at the lawyer's office right now. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. A lawyer? Why do you have a lawyer? Just for the lease, I lied quickly, looking at Nora. Nora gave me a thumbs up. I need help breaking the lease on the burnt apartment so I do not have to pay rent for a pile of ash. Oh, my mother exhaled. The relief was audible. Oh, good. That is smart. Listen, honey, Richard and I were talking. We hate that you are going through this alone. We hate that you are staying on some friend's couch. I am okay, Mom, I said. No, you are not, she insisted. You sound exhausted. We want to do something for you. We are having a little get-together on Sunday. Just family, Aunt Kendra, Uncle Bob, maybe a few of the cousins. Just a support gathering. We want to surround you with love. We want to cook you a hot meal. We want everyone to show you that we are here for you. I felt my stomach turn over. A support gathering. I knew exactly what it was. It was a tribunal. It was a stage. They wanted to get me in a room with the extended family so they could perform their roles as the grieving, supportive parents. They wanted to show everyone how unstable I was. They wanted to control the narrative in front of witnesses. If I refused, I would look ungrateful. I would look distant. I would prove their point that I was pushing people away. I looked at Nora. She nodded slowly. Her eyes said, "Go, enter the arena." That sounds nice, Mom, I said. I would like that. Wonderful, my mother chirped. Sunday at 1 o'clock. And Giselle? Maybe dress up a little? You know how Aunt Kendra is. We just want you to look your best. We want you to look put together. We want you to look like you are not falling apart, even though we are going to do everything we can to make you break. I will, I said. I will see you Sunday. We love you, she said. Okay, I said. I hung up. The silence in the office was heavy. She wants an audience, I said to Nora. She invited the whole family. Of course she did, Nora said. She needs witnesses to your breakdown. She needs people to see her hugging you, so that when the arrest warrant comes, she can say, "But I loved her. I supported her." Nora stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling city. Go to the party, Giselle, she said. Let them hug you. Let them fake their concern. Let Richard give you fatherly advice. She turned back to me, her silhouette framed by the gray sky. But wear a wire, she said. Or in this case, leave your phone recording in your pocket. Because if I know people like Richard and Angela, they will not be able to resist the urge to coach you. They will try to tell you what to say to the insurance company. They will try to tell you what to say to the investigator. And the moment they do that, she smiled again, The moment they try to script your testimony, they are committing witness tampering, and that is a felony that carries 5 years, even if the arson charge does not stick. I stood up. I felt a strange calm settling over me. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. I was walking into a trap. Yes, but I was bringing my own teeth. I will go, I said. I will eat their food. I will listen to their lies. And keep your eyes on Richard, Nora added. Angela is the face, but Richard is the money. Watch his hands. Watch his eyes when the topic of insurance comes up. He is the one who is counting the days until the payout. I know, I said. He told me it wasn't his problem. He was wrong, Nora said, picking up the forged document one last time. It is about to become his only problem. I walked out of the office, the elevator dropping 44 floors in seconds. My ears popped. Sunday, 1 o'clock. It was not a family reunion. It was a sentencing hearing. They thought they were the judges. They thought they held the gavel. But as I walked out into the busy street, blending into the crowd of strangers, I knew the truth. They were not the judges. They were the defendants, and the trial had already begun. The driveway of the house where I grew up was a graveyard of suburban ambition. It was packed with cars. I recognized Aunt Kendra's beige sedan, Uncle Bob's oversized truck, and the various coupes and crossovers belonging to cousins I had not spoken to in years. My mother had said it would be a small gathering. She had lied. This was not a dinner. It was a tribunal. I sat in Holly's car for a moment, staring at the brick facade of the 2-story colonial. It looked perfectly maintained. The hedges were trimmed to geometric precision. The windows were gleaming. It was the kind of house that whispered of stability and moral upstanding. It was the perfect camouflage for the kind of people who would forge a life insurance policy on their own child. I checked the recording app on my phone. It was running. The red timer was ticking upward, catching the sound of my own breathing. I slipped the phone into the front pocket of my blazer. Ensuring the microphone was facing out, I stepped out of the car. The winter wind was still sharp, but the cold felt different now. It was no longer a threat. It was a clarifier. I walked up the front path. I did not have to knock. The door swung open before I even reached the mat, as if they had been watching me from behind the lace curtains. Giselle! My mother stood in the doorway. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and pearl earrings. She looked soft. She looked warm. She looked like the platonic ideal of a worried mother. She did not just greet me. She launched herself at me. She threw her arms around my neck and pulled me into a hug that was tight enough to be a chokehold. It was a performance for the audience inside. I could feel the tension in her arms, the rigid, desperate strength of a woman trying to physically control the narrative. "Oh, my baby," she cried out. Her voice pitched perfectly to carry into the living room. "You are safe. You are here." I stood stiffly in her embrace. I did not hug back. I let my arms hang by my sides. "Hello, Mother," I said. My voice was low. She pulled back, holding me at arm's length. Her eyes searched my face. She was looking for cracks. She was looking for the tears, the hysteria, the exhaustion. She was looking for the victim she had created. "You look thin," she said, her voice dropping to a tragic whisper. "You look so tired. Giselle, come inside. Everyone is waiting for you." She ushered me into the foyer. The heat of the house hit me like a physical wall. It smelled of pot roast and expensive perfume. The living room was full. There were at least 15 people standing around holding glasses of wine and iced tea. When I walked in, the conversation died instantly. 15 pairs of eyes locked onto me. I saw pity. I saw curiosity. And beneath it all, I saw the judgment that my mother had already planted. Aunt Kendra was the first to move. She rushed over, a glass of Chardonnay in her hand. "Giselle," she said, touching my arm with a damp hand. "We are just so glad you are okay. When Angela told us about the state you were in, we were terrified." "I am fine, Aunt Kendra," I said. "I am just dealing with insurance." "Oh, honey, do not worry about business right now. Kendra said, her voice dripping with condescension. You need to rest. You look like you are vibrating. Have you seen anyone? A specialist? Angela said you were having trouble distinguishing reality from stress. There it was. The first strike. My reality is quite clear, I said. Uncle Bob chimed in from the sofa. Takes a toll on the mind. A fire does, he said sagely. Shock is a funny thing. Makes you see boogeymen where there are none. You just listen to your folks, girl. They want what is best. I scanned the room. I was looking for Richard. I found him in the far corner, near the sliding glass doors that led to the patio. He was not drinking wine. He was holding a tumbler of scotch, his knuckles white against the glass. He was not looking at me. He was looking at his phone. He would glance at the screen, swipe, frown, and then look out the window. He was terrified. He was checking his email. He was checking the bank account. He was waiting for the notification from Apex Mutual that the $300,000 had cleared. He did not know that the only thing clearing right now was an investigation file on his desk. Dinner is almost ready, my mother announced, clapping her hands to break the tension she had engineered. But first, I want to say something. She walked to the center of the room. She stood next to the fireplace, framed by family photos, including one of me at my college graduation, smiling oblivious to the future. She cleared her throat. She looked at me with eyes that shimmered with unshed, manufactured tears. I want to thank you all for coming, she began. This has been the hardest week of our lives. Seeing Giselle lose everything. It broke our hearts. She paused for effect. The room was silent. But what breaks my heart even more, she continued, her voice trembling, is seeing what the trauma has done to her mind. I stiffened. I felt the phone in my pocket. I hoped the microphone was catching every syllable. Giselle has been confused, my mother said. She looked around the room, making eye contact with her key allies. She has been saying things, terrible things. She has been listening to people who are putting dark thoughts in her head. She actually asked me. She choked back a sob. She pressed a tissue to her nose. She asked me if we had something to do with the fire. The room erupted. What? Aunt Kendra gasped. That is insane, Uncle Bob muttered. Oh, Angela. No, a cousin whispered. My mother looked at me. Her expression was a masterpiece of wounded martyrdom. She thinks we hurt her, my mother said, letting the tears flow freely now. Her own parents, after everything we have done, after we paid for her school, after we co-signed her first car, she thinks we would burn down her home. She turned to the crowd, opening her hands in a plea for validation. You see why we are so worried? She asked. This is not my Giselle talking. This is a breakdown. She is paranoid. She needs help. She needs us to step in and make decisions for her until she is well again. It was brilliant. It was absolutely demonic, and it was brilliant. She had just inoculated the entire family against the truth. If I stood up right now and screamed about the bag and the camera footage, everyone in this room would simply nod sadly and say, See? Angela was right. She is having a breakdown. They waited for my reaction. They expected the old Giselle, the emotional Giselle. They expected me to scream, to deny it, to cry, to stomp my feet. They expected me to provide the drama that would confirm their diagnosis. I did none of those things. I stood perfectly still. I kept my face completely neutral. I did not frown. I did not cry. I looked at my mother with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing a particularly aggressive virus under a microscope. I looked at Richard. He had finally looked up from his phone. He was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. He was waiting for the explosion. But I gave them silence. The silence stretched. It became uncomfortable. It became heavy. The relatives shifted on their feet. My mother's sobbing faltered slightly because she was not getting the cue she needed to escalate the scene. Giselle? She asked, her voice losing a fraction of its theatricality. Honey? Do you not have anything to say? I took a slow breath. I think, I said, my voice calm, level, and distinct. that the pot roast smells like it is burning. It was a non sequitur. It was mundane. And it was terrifying to them because it was not the reaction of a crazy person. It was the reaction of someone who was refusing to play the game. "I need some fresh air," I said. "The heat in here is a bit much. Excuse me." I turned around. I did not run. I walked slowly, deliberately, toward the front door. "Giselle, wait!" Aunt Kendra called out. "We are trying to help you." "Let her go," I heard Richard say. His voice was hoarse. "Just let her go outside." I opened the front door and stepped out. I closed it behind me with a soft click. I walked down the front path, past the line of cars. I kept walking until I reached the sidewalk. I turned left. I walked past the neighbor's house, past the manicured lawn of the Hendersons, until I saw a black sedan parked under the shade of a large oak tree 3 houses down. The engine was running. I opened the passenger door and slid inside. Damon Rusk was sitting in the driver's seat. The heater was on. The car smelled of stale coffee and mints. He looked at me. "You were in there for 18 minutes, he said. "I was about to come in and get you." "I am fine," I said. I pulled the phone out of my pocket and stopped the recording. I got it. I got the speech. She told the whole family I was paranoid. She set the narrative. "Classic," Rusk said. "Discredit the witness. Is the stepfather there?" "He is in the corner," I said. "He is checking his phone every 30 seconds. He looks like he is about to vomit." "Good," Rusk said. "He is the crack in the dam." He reached into the back seat and grabbed a metal clipboard. He held it tightly, his knuckles brushing against the steering wheel. "We got the call from the lab 10 minutes ago," he said. My heart stopped. This was it. The camera footage was damning, but it was still open to interpretation by a good defense lawyer. They could argue the bag held books. They could argue the timing was a coincidence. But the lab? The lab dealt in absolutes. "Tell me," I said. "They sifted through 400 pounds of debris from the corner of your living room," Rusk said. "Most of it was just carbon, but they found something fused to the copper wiring of the outlet." He flipped the cover of the clipboard open. Clipped to the top was a photo of a small, blackened lump of plastic and metal. It looked like trash, but to Rusk, and now to me, it was gold. "It is a fragment of a mechanical timer," Rusk said. "Specifically, the rotating gear mechanism from an Intermatic heavy-duty outdoor timer. The kind you use for pool pumps or holiday lights." "I did not own a timer," I said. "We know," Rusk said. "And here's the best part. The plastic casing on the timer? It had melted, but the chemical analysis picked up residue on the back of it. Traces of a volatile hydrocarbon." "Accelerant?" I asked. "Lighter fluid," Rusk confirmed. "Naphtha, to be precise. The kind you buy in a yellow bottle at any hardware store." He looked at me, his eyes grim but triumphant. "Here is the theory," he said. "She plugged the timer into the wall. She plugged a simple ignition device, maybe a modified heating element or just a rigged wire, into the timer. She set the timer for 8 or 10 hours. Then she placed a bag soaked in lighter fluid right next to it. When the timer clicked on at 2:46 in the morning, the spark hit the fumes. Whoosh." "Simple," I said. "Crude and effective," Rusk said. "But sloppy, because she bought the timer." He pulled another sheet of paper from the stack. "We ran a credit card sweep for Richard and Angela Halloway for the last 30 days. Nothing. They are smart enough to use cash. But we also pulled the inventory logs for the hardware store 3 miles from their house." He pointed to a line on the spreadsheet. "January 29th, 2:30 p.m., cash sale, 1 heavy-duty timer, 3 bottles of lighter fluid, 1 canvas tool bag." "January 29th, I said. 5 days before the fire. "We are pulling the store security footage tomorrow morning to confirm it was her," Rusk said. "But with the timer fragment in the wall, the bag on the video, and the cash purchase receipt matching the inventory, we have enough." "Enough for what?" I asked. "Enough to arrest them," Rusk said. "I am meeting with the district attorney in the morning to present the package. We should have the warrant signed by noon." I looked out the window at the house down the street. I could see the warm glow of the lights in the living room. I could see the silhouettes of my family moving around, drinking wine, eating pot roast, shaking their heads about poor, crazy Giselle. They were celebrating. They thought they had neutralized me. They thought the support gathering had worked. "They are eating dinner," I said softly. "Let them eat," Rusk said. "It is their last good meal." I looked at the photo of the timer fragment again. That tiny piece of melted plastic was the only thing that had survived the inferno. It was small. It was ugly. But it was the truth. "I have to go back in," I said. Rusk looked at me, surprised. "What? No. You do not? You have the recording. We have the evidence. Get in your car and go back to Holly's." "I have to go back in," I repeated. "I left my purse, and—" I hesitated. "And what?" "And I want to look Richard in the eye one more time," I said. "I want to see him. I want him to look at me and know that I am not broken. I want to make him nervous. If he is already cracking, I want to shatter him." Rusk studied my face. He saw the cold resolve there. He nodded slowly. "5 minutes," he said. "Get your purse. Make your exit. Do not engage. Do not tip your hand about the timer. If they know we found it, they might run." "I will be a ghost," I said. I opened the car door and stepped back out into the cold. I walked back toward the house. The wind was picking up, rattling the bare branches of the trees. It sounded like applause. I walked up the driveway. I opened the front door. The conversation in the living room had resumed. It was louder now, fueled by wine and the collective relief that the crazy person had left the room. "It is just a tragedy," I heard Aunt Kendra say. "But honestly, she has always been high-strung. Remember when she got that B in calculus? She cried for days. She needs medication," my mother's voice said. "I am going to look into guardianship, just temporary, just to handle the finances." I stood in the foyer. I listened. Guardianship. She was not just planning to steal the insurance money. She was planning to take control of my entire life. She wanted to lock me away and declare me incompetent so she could manage my assets, my bank accounts, my remaining existence. It was not just murder, it was total erasure. I walked into the living room. The talking stopped. "I forgot my purse," I said. My voice was light, breezy. I walked over to the side table where I had left my clutch. I picked it up. My mother stepped forward. "Giselle, honey, are you okay? You were gone a long time." "I just needed to breathe," I said. "The air is very crisp tonight." I turned to leave, but before I did, I looked at Richard. He was still in the corner. He was looking at me. I held his gaze. I did not blink. I did not look sad. I did not look confused. I looked at him with the exact same expression I used when I found a discrepancy in a data set at work. I looked at him like he was an error that was about to be corrected. His eyes widened. He lowered his drink. His hand was shaking so badly the ice cubes clinked against the glass. He knew, somewhere, deep in his lizard brain, he knew that the game had changed. "Goodbye, Mother," I said. "Thank you for the support. It has been illuminating." I walked out the door. I got into Holly's car. I started the engine. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw the curtain in the living room window move. Richard was watching me leave. I drove away. They had their party. They had their lies. But I had the timer. And tomorrow, the clock was going to run out for them. Monday morning broke with a sky the color of a bruised plum. The air was thick with impending snow, but the coldness inside Damon Rusk's unmarked sedan was far more biting. We were parked in an empty lot facing the river, the heater humming a low, ineffective drone. Rusk handed me a clear evidence bag. Inside, resting on a white card, was a piece of debris no larger than a matchbox. It was ugly. It was a fused lump of black plastic and copper wire, twisted into a shape that looked like a dying insect. It smelled faintly of ozone and accelerant, a scent that managed to penetrate even the heavy plastic of the bag. "This is it," Rusk said. His voice was quiet, lacking the triumph I expected. Instead, he sounded weary, like a man who had seen this specific kind of human darkness too many times. The lab finished the spectral analysis at 4 a.m. I stared at the object. What am I looking at? You are looking at the internal distinct gear assembly of a Titan Pro heavy-duty outdoor timer, Rusk explained. The casing melted away, but the gears? They are made of a heat-resistant polymer, and right here, so. He pointed to a microscopic ridge on the side of the melted gear. That is a partial batch code, he said. 0994. What does that mean? It means we know exactly where it was born, Rusk said. Titan Pro is a specific brand. They distribute regionally. Batch 0994 was shipped to a distribution center in January and dispersed to 3 hardware stores in the county. He pulled a tablet from his center console and tapped the screen. A map appeared. 3 red dots glowed on the grid. Store A is 20 miles south, Store B is downtown, and Store C, he tapped the 3rd dot. Store C is Miller's Hardware on Elm Street, he said. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Elm Street is 4 blocks from my parents' house. Exactly, Rusk said. So we went to Miller's Hardware at 7 this morning when they opened. We showed the manager the batch code. He checked his inventory logs. Rusk swiped the screen. A spreadsheet appeared. On January 29th, 5 days before the fire, someone purchased a Titan Pro timer from that batch. They also purchased 3 quart-sized bottles of clean strip naphtha lighter fluid and a canvas utility tote bag. Cash? I asked. Cash, Rusk nodded. $82.40, no credit card trail, smart. But, I prompted, sensing the turn. But Miller's Hardware upgraded their security system last month, Rusk said. 4K definition at the registers. He pressed play on a video file. The angle was from high above the counter, looking down. A figure stood at the register. She was wearing a beige raincoat and a silk scarf tied around her head, obscuring her hair. She kept her head down, avoiding the direct line of sight of the camera behind the clerk. But she could not hide her hands. As she reached into her purse to pull out the cash, the camera caught a clear shot of the bag hanging in the crook of her arm. It was a structured leather handbag with a very specific gold clasp shaped like a bamboo stalk. I stopped breathing. I gave that bag to her, I whispered. For her 50th birthday. It is a limited edition. There are maybe 100 of them in the state. And watch this, Rusk said. On the screen, the woman turned to leave. She had a distinct way of walking, a slight hesitation on the left foot, a remnant of a knee surgery she had 3 years ago. It was subtle, but to a daughter who had walked behind her for 32 years, it was as recognizable as a fingerprint. It is her, I said. It is Angela Halloway, buying the timer, buying the lighter fluid, buying the bag she used to carry it all into my apartment. Rusk turned off the tablet. We have the weapon, he said. We have the purchase. We have the delivery system. And thanks to Nora, we have the motive. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Nora Vance. The affidavit is signed. Kevin at the insurance desk picked her out of the lineup with 90% certainty. He remembers the bamboo clasp on her purse. He complimented her on it when she was forging your signature. The vanity. Her vanity had been the loose thread that unraveled the whole tapestry. She had worn her expensive bag to commit a felony because she could not bear to be seen in public without it. We have everything, I said. So why are we sitting here? Why aren't we arresting them? The warrant is being typed up right now, Rusk said. The judge is reviewing the package. It will be signed by noon, but there is a complication. What complication? We need them in one place, Rusk said. And we need to make sure Richard does not run. We have eyes on the house, but if he gets wind that the insurance claim is flagged, and the company is legally required to notify him of a status update by midday today, he might try to liquidate assets and flee. He has offshore accounts from his consulting days. He looked at me. We need someone inside the house, he said. Someone to keep them calm. Someone to keep them talking until the units get into position. I understood immediately. You want me to go back? I cannot order you to do it, Rusk said. It is dangerous. They are desperate people. But if you are there, playing the role of the submissive daughter, they will not run. They will think they have won. They will stay put to manage you. I looked at the evidence bag one last time. I looked at the twisted metal that had almost killed me. I will go, I said. Giselle, I will go. I repeated. I walked out of that party yesterday. I need a reason to go back. I will tell them I am ready to sign the guardianship papers. That will keep them glued to the kitchen table. Rusk nodded slowly. Okay, keep your phone on. Keep the line open if you can. We will be right outside. When you see the text from me saying green, you unlock the front door and step away from them. I drove to my parents' house with a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard determination. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a delivery system for justice. When I pulled into the driveway, Richard's car was there. My mother's car was there. The house looked quiet, wrapped in the deceptive peace of suburbia. I walked to the front door and unlocked it with my key. The key they had never asked for back because they assumed I would never use it again. Mom? Richard? I called out. They were in the living room, the scene of yesterday's tribunal. The remnants of the party were gone, but the tension remained. My mother was sitting on the sofa, flipping through a magazine but not reading it. Richard was pacing by the window, his phone in his hand. When they saw me, they both froze. Giselle, my mother said, standing up quickly. Her face cycled through 3 different expressions: fear, relief, and finally, calculated concern. We did not expect you back. After yesterday. I am sorry about yesterday, I said, dropping my shoulders in a posture of defeat. I was overwhelmed. I walked out because I felt like I was losing my mind. Richard stopped pacing. He looked at me with hungry eyes. And now? Now I realize you were right, I said. I am not thinking clearly. I am seeing things. The stress is too much. If you think guardianship is the best way to handle the insurance and the finances, I am willing to talk about it. The tension in the room snapped. My mother let out a long, shuddering breath. Richard actually smiled. It was a shark smile. Oh, thank God, my mother said, rushing over to hug me. Thank God you are being sensible. We only want to protect you. Giselle. I know, I said, letting her hug me. I could smell her perfume. It was the same scent she had worn the day she planted the firebomb. I know you do. Sit down, Richard commanded, gesturing to the armchair. I can call the lawyer. We can have the papers drawn up this afternoon. We can get the insurance funds released directly to a trust account. A trust account, I repeated. That sounds safe. It is very safe, Richard said, his fingers flying across his phone screen. We will take care of everything. You won't have to worry about a single bill. I sat in the chair. It was comfortable. It was domestic. It was the perfect setting for a betrayal. Mom, I said softly, can I ask you one thing? Just to put my mind at ease? So I can stop having these paranoid thoughts? Of course. Baby, she said, sitting opposite me, leaning forward with an eager, helpful expression. Anything. The day you visited, I said. Last Tuesday, when you were in my apartment for 3 hours. Her smile faltered, just a fraction. 3 hours? Honey, I was there for 20 minutes. I told you that. I know, I said, but my mind, it keeps showing me this image. It is so vivid. I see you walking in with a big black canvas bag, a heavy one. The room went dead silent. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. A black bag? She said. Her laugh was brittle, like cracking glass. Giselle, really, I carried my purse. You know my purse. I do, I said. The one with the bamboo clasp. The one you used to buy the timer at Miller's Hardware. Richard dropped his phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. My mother's face went the color of old paper. I do not know what you are talking about. Miller's Hardware, I continued, my voice steady and relentless. January 29th, cash purchase, 1 Titan Pro outdoor timer, 3 bottles of naphtha lighter fluid, and 1 canvas tool bag. I looked at her. Where is the bag? Mom? Did you leave it behind the chair? The one you measured? Richard, she gasped. She turned to him, her eyes wide and terrified. Richard, she is doing it again. She is delusional. But Richard was not looking at her. He was looking at me, and he was not seeing a delusional daughter. He was seeing the end of his life. How do you know about Miller's? He asked. His voice was a growl. Because the timer survived, I said. Or at least, the gears did. They found the batch code. Richard, 0994. They traced it to the store. They have the video of Mom buying it. You are lying, my mother screeched. She stood up, her hands balling into fists. You are a liar. You are trying to ruin us because you are ungrateful. After everything we did for you. Did you do it for the 300,000? I asked. Or was it just because you needed to wipe out the debt Richard got you into? Shut up, Richard roared. He took a step toward me. His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging. You shut your mouth, you ungrateful little brat. You come into my house and accuse us? I am not accusing you, I said calmly. The evidence is accusing you. The camera in my hallway, the camera at the hardware store, the signature on the insurance form, the clerk who identified you. There is no clerk, my mother yelled. Her voice cracked, hitting a high, hysterical note. I never went to the office. I never signed anything. Holly remembers, I said, throwing in the final grenade. She remembers you telling her you found a way to wipe the slate clean. Was I the slate? Mom? Was I just a stain you needed to scrub out so you could keep your country club membership? We did what we had to do, Richard shouted. He was losing control. The mask of the successful banker was gone, revealing the desperate, cornered rat underneath. You have no idea the pressure we were under. You have that fancy job, that money, and you never offered to help. You let us drown. So you decided to burn me, I said. It was supposed to be quick, my mother sobbed. You were supposed to be asleep. You would not have felt anything. I stared at her. The confession hung in the air, naked and horrifying. She did not deny the intent. She only defended the method. I would not have felt anything, I repeated. That is your defense? That it would have been a painless murder? You are my daughter, she wailed, as if that explained everything. I brought you into this world. I have the right. I needed. She stopped. Richard's phone, lying on the carpet where he had dropped it, began to buzz. It vibrated violently against the floorboards. The screen lit up. The caller ID was visible to all of us. Unknown/county line. Richard stared at the phone. He looked like he wanted to kick it, but he couldn't move his legs. Answer it. Richard, I said. I think they want to talk to you about your trust account. You set us up, he whispered. He looked at me with pure hatred. You came here to trap us. No, I said. You trapped yourselves. I just turned on the lights. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. It was a cheerful, melodious chime, completely at odds with the horror in the room. My mother stopped crying. She looked at the door. She looked at the window. Through the sheer curtains, the flashing blue lights were already visible, painting the living room walls in strobing patterns of azure. Richard? She whispered. Richard, who is at the door? Richard did not answer. He slumped into the sofa, putting his head in his hands. I stood up. My legs felt strong. My heart was beating slow and steady. I think, I said, looking down at the people who had raised me, that it is the fire investigator. He probably has some questions about a black bag. I walked to the door. I did not look back. I reached for the handle. The lock clicked open, and the world rushed in. The door swung open, and the cold winter air rushed into the overheated foyer, carrying with it the sharp, static crackle of police radios. Damon Rusk stood on the welcome mat. He was not alone. Behind him stood 2 uniformed officers and a detective in a cheap suit who looked like he had been waiting a long time for this moment. The flashing blue lights from the squad cars cut through the darkness, illuminating the front lawn and casting chaotic, strobing shadows against the floral wallpaper of the hallway. "Angela Holloway," Rusk said. His voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that silenced the entire house. "You are under arrest for arson in the 1st degree, insurance fraud, and attempted murder." For a second, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Then, my mother screamed. It was not a scream of fear. It was a scream of indignation. It was the sound of a woman who had spent 50 years believing that rules were for other people. "This is ridiculous!" she shrieked, backing away as the officers stepped into the foyer. "You cannot come in here. This is harassment. My daughter is making this up. She is mentally unstable." She pointed a shaking finger at me. I was still standing near the door, my face impassive. "Tell them, Giselle," she commanded. "Tell them you are confused. Tell them you invited us to a party." The relatives in the living room were frozen in a tableau of shock. Aunt Kendra had her hand over her mouth. Uncle Bob was staring at the handcuffs dangling from the officer's belt. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had hugged me 10 minutes ago, checking for wires while she told me she loved me. "I am not confused, Mother," I said. "And I did not invite you. The district attorney did." "Cuff her," the detective said. "No." My mother slapped the officer's hand away. "You have no proof. You have nothing but the word of a crazy girl." "We have a lot more than that. Mrs. Holloway," Rusk said. He stepped into the light of the chandelier, holding the clear evidence bag I had seen in the car. He held it up like a holy relic. "We have the timer," Rusk said. "The Titan Pro heavy-duty outdoor timer you bought at Miller's Hardware on January 29th. We found the gears fused to the wiring in your daughter's wall. The batch code matches the inventory. The inventory matches your receipt." My mother's face went slack. The color drained out of her skin so fast she looked like a wax figure. "And we have the video," Russ continued, his voice relentless. 4K footage of you buying the timer, and the lighter fluid, and the canvas bag. He turned to the silent, horrified audience in the living room. "And we have video from the apartment building," Rusk announced, addressing Aunt Kendra directly, "showing this woman entering Giselle's home with a full bag of equipment and leaving 3 hours later with an empty shoulder. We have the lock logs. We have the forged signature on the insurance policy verified by a handwriting expert. We have the clerk who identified her." He looked back at my mother. "We have everything. Angela, the show is over." The officer stepped forward again. This time, my mother did not fight. She went limp. As the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, she let out a low, animal sound of despair. It was the sound of a narcissist realizing that the mirror had finally shattered. "Richard," she gasped, looking toward the living room. "Richard, do something. Call the lawyer." Richard was standing by the fireplace. He looked like he was trying to merge with the brickwork. He was pale, sweating, and shaking so violently that the ice in his Scotch glass was rattling. "Mr. Holloway," the detective said, moving toward him. "We need to have a conversation." "I did not do it," Richard blurted out. His voice was high and thin. "I was at work. I have an alibi. I did not set the fire." "No," the detective said, closing the distance. "But you printed the insurance forms. You filed the paperwork. That makes you a co-conspirator in a felony fraud case and an accessory to attempted murder." "It was her idea," Richard shouted, pointing at his wife. The betrayal was instant and absolute. "She said it was the only way to pay off the second mortgage. She said Giselle would not feel anything. I just followed the plan." The room gasped. It was the death knell. With those 6 words, "I just followed the plan," He had sealed their fate. My mother stopped struggling. She stared at her husband with a look of pure, concentrated venom. If looks could kill, Richard would have combusted right there on the Persian rug. "You coward," she hissed. "You pathetic coward." "Get them out of here," Rusk said. I watched as the police led them away. My mother tried to maintain her dignity, walking with her head high. But it is hard to look regal when you are being marched out of your own front door in handcuffs. Richard was practically carried out, his legs giving way under the weight of his own terror. The front door closed. The blue lights continued to flash through the window. But the siren wails began to fade as the cars pulled away. I was left standing in the foyer with 15 of my relatives. The silence was deafening. Aunt Kendra lowered her hand from her mouth. She looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw something other than judgment in her eyes. I saw shame, deep, burning shame. She had spent the last week telling everyone I was crazy. She had told me to go to a facility. She had unwittingly been the PR department for my potential murderers. "Giselle," she whispered, we did not know." "You did not ask," I said. I walked into the living room. I picked up my purse from the side table. I looked at the buffet table, laden with the pot roast and the wine, the feast they had prepared to celebrate my destruction. "You all thought I was the problem," I said, addressing the room. "You believed them because it was easier than believing that successful, well-dressed people could be monsters. You wanted me to be the dramatic, unstable daughter, because that story made sense to you." I paused, looking at Uncle Bob, who was staring at his shoes. "The next time someone tells you a victim is crazy," I said, "ask yourself who benefits from that diagnosis." I turned and walked out. Damon Rusk was waiting for me by his car. He looked tired, but the tension in his shoulders was gone. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am better than okay," I said. "I am free." The next few weeks were a blur of legal motions and paperwork, but for the first time, the bureaucracy was working for me. Not against me. Nora Vance was a hurricane. She filed immediate restraining orders against both my parents, barring them from contacting me from jail. She petitioned the court to freeze their assets to prevent them from funding a high-end defense, arguing that the funds were likely proceeds from other financial improprieties Richard had hinted at. Then she went after the insurance. With the police report and the arrest warrants, the hold on my policy was lifted, but Nora did not stop there. She filed a civil suit against my parents for the emotional distress, the destruction of property, and the conspiracy. She also negotiated a settlement with the building management company, who were eager to avoid a lawsuit about their security protocols. The money that hit my bank account was substantial. It was enough to replace everything I had lost 10 times over, but I did not use it to buy things. I used it to buy safety. Then came the email from Redwood and Klein. I was sitting in Nora's office when it came through. It was from Linda Trask, the VP of HR. "Dear Ms. Jenkins, we have received the official documentation from your legal counsel regarding the criminal investigation involving your family. We are shocked and appalled by what you have endured. Please accept this email as formal confirmation that the mandatory fitness for duty hearing has been canceled effective immediately. Your security clearance has been fully restored. Furthermore, we have removed the anonymous complaint from your personnel file, as it has been determined to be malicious and unfounded. We look forward to your return. Take as much time as you need." I read it twice. The stain on my name was gone. I was no longer the unstable analyst. I was the survivor. 3 months later, I stood in the center of my new living room. It was on the 12th floor of a high-rise building downtown. It had concrete walls, sprinkler systems in every room, and 24-hour concierge security. It was empty, save for a few boxes I had not unpacked yet. I walked to the front door. It had a keypad lock, similar to the one in my old apartment, but this one was different. This one I had programmed myself. I typed in the code, 8841. It was not a random number. It was the date of the arrest, the date I took my life back. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. I could see the reflection of the room behind me in the glass. I looked different. My hair was shorter. I was wearing new clothes. Clothes I had chosen, not hand-me-downs from Holly. I was seeing a therapist twice a week. Doctor. Evans was helping me unpack the years of gaslighting, the subtle manipulations, the way my mother had trained me to doubt my own perception of reality. It was hard work, harder than the fire investigation. There were days when I woke up smelling smoke. There were days when I reached for the phone to call my mom, only to remember that she was awaiting trial in a county jail cell. But the silence in my head was new. The voice that used to tell me I was dramatic, that I was too much, that I was a burden, that voice was fading. I thought about the family gathering. I thought about Richard's face when he realized the game was up. I thought about the timer gears melted into the wall. They had tried to burn me down to collect a check. They had treated me like an asset to be liquidated. But fire is a purifying force. It burns away the rot. It burns away the lies. I turned away from the window. I walked to the kitchen, where a brand new, high-end coffee maker sat on the counter. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat on my new sofa. It was velvet. It was blue. It was mine. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Holly. Dinner tonight? I found a place that serves fries with truffle oil. I smiled. I am in. I typed back. I put the phone down. I took a sip of tea. I was Giselle Jenkins. I was a senior data strategist. I was a daughter who had survived her parents. The fire had taken my photos. It had taken my clothes. It had taken the illusion of a happy childhood. But it had given me something else. It had given me the absolute, unshakable knowledge that I could face the worst thing imaginable and walk out the other side. I looked at the front door. It was locked. It was safe. And for the first time in 32 years, I knew exactly who held the key. The fire took my belongings, but it returned to me the one thing they had stolen for years, the right to believe in myself. And this time, when they said, "Not our problem," I smiled, because I finally understood they were never my home. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts and connect with you all. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Nina Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.